For centuries, capitalists ruled the world. They crafted a dystopian hellscape and commodified everything. Life, democracy, even the planet. Facing extinction, a rebel group emerged to challenge the capitalists. The online left, a group of deviants, zoomers, and millennial misfits devoted to shitposting their way to a better world, one tweet at a time. Will they put aside their hatred of one another to defeat their capitalist common enemy? Find out now on Dystopian Times.
Witness destruction of everything that you known. While others chase the elite, we stand alone. Dark days coming, regardless, we never running. People still suffering, and everybody's wondering who's gonna lead the charge, who's gonna be the choice. Rooted from the bottom so the underdog can have a voice. Foundation, based in reality. Power to the people, people power, not a fallacy. Call it what you want it, but I know you hear us coming. Eyes wide open, cause you see we're on to something. The future on the line. We're here to redefine. Political powers recognize these dystopian times.
Folks, welcome to the event of the century. It is the season finale of Dystopian Times, and for this very special occasion, I wore my best Zelda shirt. You can't really see it, but it is based. I'll let you all take a moment to kind of like soak that in. Very, very proud of this. Well, folks, listen. I'm going to bring together the greatest minds on the internet to solve the biggest issues, to answer the biggest questions that the left is asking today and fighting about. And I'm not going to tell you them just yet because I want to leave you on the edge of your seats so you watch the whole show. But without further ado, let's go ahead and bring in our panel. First and foremost, folks, we have the absolutely brilliant Spencer Snyder. Spencer, who are you? What do you do? And where can we find your content?
Hey, Mike. Thanks so much for having me on. So my focus is media criticism and media literacy. So I do a lot of videos on manufacturing consent, the different things that branch off from manufacturing consent, the whole theory of unworthy and worthy victims. I just wrote a piece for fairness and accuracy in reporting. So I'm getting into some writing too, but mostly it's on YouTube, and you can find my videos where I do insane things like watch a whole day of CNN for 18 hours straight and rant about it. So
that's dedication. That's dedication. Oh, I'm sure. Well, I'm glad to have your perspective here. And yeah, really, really looking forward to chatting with you. The next individual, folks, is Riverboat Jack. How's it going? Who are you, and where do you come from on the internet? Which corner of the internet are you from?
Hello, I'm Riverboat Jack, and I come from. I have a really weird career path story, but in a nutshell, I was a game journalist for a nonprofit that helped sick and injured kids across the United States and Canada for about 10-ish years, 7 to 10 years, somewhere in there. And then I started streaming on Twitch because our world is in trouble, and I think we need everyone to pitch in and do whatever they can. And well, talking is about one of the only things I do really well. So yeah, you can find my content over at twitch.tv/riverboatjack, where I stream every weeknight at 8 p.m. Central.
Well, thank you so much. I'm so glad to have you. By the way, folks, I'll have links in the description box if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're watching this on Means TV, you will have to seek out these folks. But I mean, I'm sure that you will be able to find them pretty easily. Well, the next person that we have on our panel today, it's been a long time, but I'm so glad to have this person back. It's Hector Oseguera. Hector, how's it going?
Hey, Mike. Thanks so much for having me back on.
Yeah, what have you been up to? So you ran for Congress. What has life been like for you now?
Well, life has been pretty exciting ever since I ran for Congress. Basically, I've been up to pissing off the local Democratic establishment here in Hudson County ever since then. Specifically on the issue of abolishing ICE, we've been hitting them pretty hard, them being the local Democrats in Hudson County who love ICE money and currently are suing. We have a lawsuit going against the county executive and the county government, a bunch of officials, having to do with us protesting abolishing ICE outside of his home and subsequently being arrested for that. And so, yeah, I've basically been up to my old agitating ways ever since then.
Well, that's the best thing that you can be doing. I love it. That's awesome to hear. Well, glad to have you here, Hector, and really excited to have your input on these really important issues, especially from your perspective, someone running or who did run for Congress, who's deeply involved in electoral politics. I think that your perspective, you're kind of like going to give us a really well, you know what? I'm not even going to talk about that yet because I haven't given the viewers what the question prompt is, even though the panels know. But you're going to be very valuable, as will everyone else. Thank you, Hector. Okay, folks, the next person that I have on is Dan from the internet. Dan, how's it going? What do you do for a living on YouTube?
Hello, humans. Hello, Mike. Thank you for having me on. You can find me at youtube.com/Dan from the internet, as you can see from my name on here. And I do a number of things. I've most recently started a show called Power Report. It's basically just the idea that we can look at news, we can jump out of the news cycle, focus on what really matters, and also have a little bit of fun. But also the idea that you can have a left that is intersectional, big tent, ready to agitate, ready to be really just like powerful and a force, and that none of these things have to be mutually exclusive in any kind of ways. I used to work as a producer at the Young Turks. I was a host from time to time, very sparingly, but yeah, that's sort of my background. I've done some other work at some other like publications from here and there, but yeah, striking it out independent in the biz. And yeah, super excited to be with y'all in this conversation. I know you're teasing it, but this is a really, really good topic that I'm excited to get a number of diverse perspectives on.
Yeah, same here. Well, I'm so glad to have you. I'm so glad that you just started your show because I've known about you and I've seen you on like TYT panels, but then I realized you have a show and I'm like, wait, did I not know that Dan had a show? And I'm like only now finding it. Like, what a terrible person. But I'm glad that you are new.
I like to be very low key until I'm not. That's kind of my trick. So consider yourself on the ground floor.
Hey, well that's great. That's great. Well, folks, the next person that I am bringing in, I really appreciate this person so much, perhaps more so than anyone else on the panel, because she had to get up early to be here. And I don't even do things like that, folks. From Down Under, it is Pix. How's it going, Pix?
Good morning. It's early for me. It's 11 a.m. It's not early for,
I guess,
the rest of Australia.
Oh my God.
Hello. I'm Pix. I generally cover the news at a very insomniac American time at about 7 p.m. Australian time, AEST, over on Twitch at Pixel Smixel. But I got here in a very interesting way. I was kind of like an uber Neopets capitalist as I was growing up.
Oh.
I was like, playing these online games, being absolutely ridiculous at 14, being like, if I just buy it from the shop for this much, then I can resell it and I'll be able to make a profit. And then I ended up doing a degree in forensic psychology and started playing video games on the internet. But I felt really stifled by, I guess, trying to appeal to brands as a content creator. And there was a day that came and I was just, no, I'm going to be very loud about my opinions. And I realized I had a pretty good newsreader voice. And from there, it kind of just spiraled into a lot of like, I guess, political edutainment and just general edutainment, which has been incredible. So, yeah.
Well, that's awesome. That's so good to hear. Yeah, no, you're like part of the wave of new like Twitch streamers, along with Riverboat Jack, that I just discovered this year once I jumped on Twitch, and it's so nice to see like so many new voices. Like I thought that there was like only 3 people that do politics online. Apparently, there's like a whole other world on Twitch. So it's really nice to hear your content or hear your voice on your platform, and I'm glad that you're here now to give us your perspective, especially because you have the Australian perspective. So it's nice to bring in like international voices, but this is my segue into the next panelist, another international voice, a neighbor from north of the border. Folks, it's Hildebeest. Hildebeest, welcome.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. I am so excited. I'm almost going to pee my pants because I'm just so excited. I've been a fan of yours for so many years, Mike. So
oh,
cheers,
thank
Mike.
you.
That
means so much.
Well, it's honestly true. I'm not blowing smoke up your arse or anything. No, it's just true. I am a third generation anarchist. I'm raising a fourth currently right now. I stream politics and horror games, and I build 2-meter cakes, and I do all this on Twitch. It wasn't what I had gone to school for. I went to school way long ago, back in the olden days, as my kid calls it. And I had a very successful dental practice. And what I did was I moved up to the Arctic, and I gave 5 years of my life, and I gave 5 free years to the communities up in the Arctic of dental treatment. Didn't matter who walked into my clinic, it was all for free. And because I'm an anarchist, and because of that background, I have always felt Medicare for all, dental for all, hearing for all, optical for all, everything for all. And so when I got onto Twitch and I found that there was this little niche for politics, I left all of the American politics for all those people that can do it way much more better than me. But I found that there wasn't a lot with respect to Canadian politics. And so I thought, well, that's what I will do. So when I did that, I also realized there wasn't a lot that I could do without basically climbing the walls. So that's why I've done more of a variety thing. So I do the cakes, I do the games, and I also do the politics. And I have a lot
That's
of fun.
awesome.
I have a lot
That is
of fun.
incredible. I am an amateur baker, so I will have to check out your cakes that you designed. I'm not very good. They taste good, but they look terrible. But I'm very curious. I'll have to check out that aspect of your online life. Well, it's so great to have you here, Hilda. All right, folks. Well, we have 2 panelists left to bring on. One half of another show that I love. It is Actual Jake from Hannah and Jake, and also Twitch streams.
Yes.
How's it going?
Good. It's going well. Yeah, so I'm Actual Jake. We do politics and YouTube reaction things against the people you hate most on YouTube. So anyone that you ever heard that made a really shitty video online, I've probably yelled at them. I've probably debated them at some point. I don't know. I've been on YouTube forever. Started it with the old timey Bible Reloaded. Ended up changing to Hannah and Jake. We made a more political sort of lefty thing. Now it's pretty much just politics that I enjoy most. I have a background in education. I went to school to be a teacher. Lot of issues with teaching in America. It wasn't as appealing. And so I ended up getting, I have a skill for it, but also I'm very lucky and fortunate to have been able to make a career on YouTube for almost a decade. So, and Twitch now, which is more recent. But so we do a lot of mutual aid. We do, which is a huge part of the stream. We do a lot of, sort of community building. A lot of weirdly for a cis straight white guy. I have a huge LGBTQ plus community, so it's just like a nice, safe little place for us. And then we also get to have the catharsis of yelling at people that suck. So
that's awesome.
If you're into that, and then you might see the corn thing, or maybe know me because I'm sometimes in a corn suit. It's because it's a whole inside joke, but it doesn't matter. Chat pays me to do that. Because they're weirdos and they like that stuff, but it's sort of turned into a dog whistle for positivity and stuff. So if you see the corn thing on Twitter, it means like a good thing, and then because of that, I guess wheat is a bad thing. So it's a bunch of that. So yeah, if you see corn Twitter, they're good people. So
the corn suit, I love it so much. And folks, if you see me wearing like some sort of a suit, like I don't know, a dinosaur suit. I'm absolutely ripping off Jake. I'm ripping off Jake 100%. It's so great. I love it so much. Well, Jake, I'm so glad to have you on. Super excited that you have the corn suit in the back. It's just like, it's good vibes with the corn suit. I love the corn suit.
Thank you.
Well, folks, certainly, last but not least, is an absolute behemoth in the field of politics, history, academia. It is Professor Harvey J.K., who I will be calling Harvey with his permission throughout the duration of the stream. How's it going, Harvey?
I'm very excited to be here. I've got to be, I don't know, at the least twice the age of just about everybody else here, and maybe more. Maybe I'm even tempted to say 3 times, but that would be probably an exaggeration.
No way, no way.
Anyhow, but I can tell you this: I'm decidedly from another generation. My media claims go from doing television and radio, and in fact, I've done some TV commentary down in Australia and radio commentary in Australia. I mean, I could connect everyone. I've been on TYT any number of times. I have good friends in Canada, some of whom I mentor. I'm from northern New Jersey, Hector. So growing up, I spent a fair bit of time in Hudson County. But I'm out here in Green Bay, Wisconsin now. Until a year ago, I was a professor for 42 years with the title Ben and Joyce Rosenberg Professor of Democracy and Justice, which every time I went on a radio show, they would say, wow, how'd you get that title? And I'd explain, and they say, well, how did you keep the title given Scott Walker was governor of Wisconsin, that kind of thing. My politics are decidedly on the left. I'm in certain quarters have a reputation as a Marxist, in other places merely a social democrat. Depends on where I am at the time. I do stuff with Jacobin. I do stuff with Nomiki Khan. I was very close to Michael Brooks. In fact, we were talking just the day he passed away. And it was that kind of thing. So, I've been around where most of you are probably heading. I'm only a consumer of Twitch on occasion. I know Mike because I've done his show a number of times, and I was very impressed by just how bright you are. And when I saw all your names,
thank you.
I said, my goodness, this is going to be an interesting crew. I think I actually tweeted it. I'm very active on Twitter. I think I said an amazing crew or panel of people. And as I told my former students who I stay in touch with, I'm definitely the old man in this crowd. So we'll see how it goes.
Well, one thing that I love about you, Harvey, is that you are on Twitter, like you're super active, but yet you're not like terminally online. And I want you to teach me how you do that, because Twitter has rotted my brain, and it hasn't you have so much wisdom and you're just so bright. So you'll have to teach me because I try to use less Twitter.
Well, I always get a kick out of it when my phone tells me how much time I've been on my phone in a week versus last week. So,
right. All right. Well, folks,
one last confession before we start. One last confession.
A confession. Okay.
Yeah. So I don't know how many people know, Mike, I've written a lot of books, and I've edited a lot of books, and I've written a lot of commentary and columns. But for the last several months, I have been binging fantasy series from everywhere from Australia to Turkey. And I just yesterday I finished another one from Brazil, and I said I was waiting for a book to arrive today. I was going to break the addiction, and they decided that the book wouldn't be released for another month. So I'm not sure what I'm going to do for the next few weeks. There's my confession.
Well, if you've not read any Brandon Sanderson, you should check it out.
You're asking me to read a book?
Okay.
That's good.
This is a great series.
That sounds good. Okay.
I just started reading Andy Weir's Hail Mary, and I'm addicted to it. But I'm gonna take us down some weird path, and we'll start talking about like video games and like Dungeons and Dragons. So I will.
Love Dungeons and Dragons.
I don't know about it, but I'm always down to have nerdy conversations, and I kind of like put that at the hierarchy of like the nerdiest conversations with love, because I love nerd culture and stuff.
I didn't mention that, but we also do that on my channel. We do Dungeons and Dragons, lefty style. So
same.
Yeah.
Very cool. Very cool. I love it. Well, okay, folks. So let's get down to business here. Okay. So There's a lot of issues right now going on when it comes to leftist politics. And I brought all of you on because I think that you have really interesting and unique perspectives. To me, the question that I'm about to ask, I feel like there's no right or wrong answer. There's just a lot of gray area. And it's kind of messy, right? So the answer has to do with the extent to which electoral politics matters. This is, something that we'll see discussed from time to time on the left. It even gets relatively divisive. So the question that I want to pose to the panel is, should the left, after losing in 2020 and 2016, should we focus more so on direct action and mutual aid as opposed to this hyper focus on electoral politics? Or should we focus on actually obtaining real political power, getting involved locally, running for Congress, actually trying to build power? Or is it a combination of both? Do we need to recalibrate to make sure we focus more on one or the other? So this is a question that I think is really interesting, and I don't really have a strong answer. My instinct is to say both, but I think that it's a lot more nuanced than that, and I kind of want to take some time to play around in the gray area. So the first person who I want to go to is Professor Harvey J.K., because you always kind of ground your political ideology in history, and I think that that's really important, because if you want to know where we're headed, you kind of get a little bit of a roadmap by looking at where we've been. So what is your take on this issue of electoral politics, Professor?
I can't imagine an either or to this. I really can't. I can't imagine a political party system that isn't propelled, for better or worse, in any number of directions, by anything less than serious social movements. I mean, it's very hard to imagine otherwise. But in those terms, I'm not going to talk very long. I'm going to just lay this out because this is kind of old left view. But I'm a labor unionist. I've been a labor unionist for many, many years, and I still believe that however much we can run into unions that may well be obstructing of what we would think of as a left agenda, that there will be no serious left until there is a serious left labor movement. And I can base that on historical arguments and contemporary arguments. In fact, I'll even go so far as to say that on occasion recently on various shows, I do a weekly thing with a guy named David Feldman, one of his shows. And I've been saying recently that no labor movement, no left. And I've even gone further and said, I don't even know if there is a left right now. I know there are lots of diverse lefts, but I don't know if there's a left.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of factionalization. I mean, that's kind of for part 2 of the panel.
Right.
But it kind of seems like... No, I think that that's really important, because it feels like we're kind of all going into separate directions. And this is why I really wanted to ask this question, because we all have different ideas. Like for me, I am a news YouTuber, and so I'm almost hyper focused on electoral politics to the detriment of direct action and mutual aid, whereas folks like Actual Jay kind of do a combination of both. You talk about current events and whatnot, but you also have this really strong focus on mutual aid. So what's your take on this? Because what I'll usually see is people will say, Mike, you focus too much on electoral politics. It doesn't matter. Stop talking about politicians. Stop directing people how to get involved locally, nationally. What is your opinion on this? Because it's kind of hard to walk that fine line.
Yeah, I definitely think we can do both at the same time, like walk and chew bubblegum sort of thing, because you have to. There are situations where someone needs $300 by the end of the week, not Medicare for all in 2 years. You know what I mean? Like, and that's super important all the time. So, in my community, not just my community, there's tons of lefty communities, and not even, even liberal communities that do some form of at least charity stuff. Usually it's for like sick puppies, but we also try to like pay rent here. But I think electoral politics are frustrating and slow, and it's very deliberate. And we live in an age where we can be very, very quickly satisfied via technology and for pretty much everything else. And so it can feel, especially for our generation or younger, that things just move incredibly slowly. But I have to remind people, now I don't have Harvey's background here, but I went for history. And I dabble. I'm certainly not, I didn't pursue a master's or anything, but and I just the trends do show that like life does improve, and we do slowly win ground all the time, especially socially. Now, obviously, this isn't like the goal. We're not trying to just barely dig trenches for like World War I and get 20 feet forward. We want to win-win more often. And so I think really the answer is, if we want, and I know this is sort of a little bit of the next conversation, but it applies to this as well. If we agree pretty much that both are very important, we need apparatuses that deal with both of those things kind of at the same time regularly. So specifically electoral politics, we need to figure out what's the next thing we need. What is the next like leftist thing that will help the most? And I think that's probably healthcare, but you could also make a very strong argument right now for housing. So one of those two things probably needs to topple. And we need to win that one. And we need to focus on that in America specifically. I don't know about Canadians and what your problems are over there, or Australians or anything, because we are very American centric here and we have a lot of problems. But I think we can talk about a lot of the other stuff. We could talk about what specific leftism we want to end up being, whether you're an anarcho-communist or whether you're, I don't know, a soc dem. It doesn't really matter, because we all want the first basic step. So we have to start there first, in my opinion. I think we get ahead of ourselves a lot of the time. Like, what's the ultimate goal? Well, we can't get there if we don't have health care. We can't get there if no one has a house. So that's kind of my take.
Yeah, what I kind of notice is, and this is maybe a projection because this is my feelings, is I overall I focus more on electoral politics myself in terms of priorities, but depending on my mood, I'll kind of go back and forth. Like, for example, after Bernie lost in 2020, that was where mentally I'm like, all right, waving the white flag, what's the point? It's just, there's so much disappointment, there's so much distress and distraught. But then I think, if I focus only on mutual aid, that might solve some issues, maybe in my area, maybe online, but then we're still not solving the structural issues that need to be addressed. So it feels like almost a cop-out to go from one to the next. And really, to me, this is about like trying to do both, but in a healthy way. And I wanted to go to Hector, who has kind of been on both sides here, right? So you ran for Congress. That's how you and I first met. And now you're doing a lot of direct action and mutual aid in your community. So how do you find that balance if you do believe that both are necessary?
Yeah, so echoing what a lot of has been said is that I don't think this is an either or. Where I see the genesis of this question coming up is that in a lot of leftist spaces, you have people who question the efficacy of participating in electoral or giving energy to electoral, specifically when there are so many people with immediate needs right now, right? Who need things. They can't wait, like you said, for Medicare for all. They can't wait for a jobs program to get them somewhere. They have to take care of things literally today or tomorrow, or they'll be evicted, or they'll be homeless, or they'll have, food insecurity. And so to me, I think it is about having a healthy balance where we're not deprioritizing one or the other. I think there has to be a healthy getting both done at the same time. And I guess what I always want to say is that we can't deprioritize one or the other. There is utility to participating in electoral because we need a long-term strategy. We need things to look forward to. And that's what I think the utility that electoral participation has. I'm honest with people, although I do, I'm all for direct action. Like I said, I was arrested a couple months ago for a direct action against the county executive in Hudson County, which Harvey will tell you is not a safe thing to do in general. But at the end of the day, I am trying to get you to vote. I am trying to get you to participate in local politics. One thing that I'll say, just sort of to end my thing, is that I look at a lot of vote totals. And when you look at an election result, you always see, you see that the top of the ticket always gets the most votes. The president gets more than the senator, who gets more than the congressman, who gets more than the mayor. But the fact of the matter is that your mayor has more of an effect on your life than any president will ever have. So if we had the sort of leftist participation that I'm trying to foster, it would be reversed. And your mayor would be the person getting the most votes and less people voting up the chain, because those people don't have a direct action on what your life is going to be like.
Can I ask a follow-up question on that?
Sure.
I'm wondering if a part of electoral politics and the problem of it in America specifically is the way we vote. Like, obviously, there's a ton about like voter suppression and stuff, but what is, like, just because of your view on it, what do you think the most effective way to actually vote is? It can't be how we do it now. I feel like it's ranked choice, but at all levels, pretty much. But how do you feel?
Yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, I love that question because we need a lot of democratic reforms to make the system more responsive to people. But we have a problem of like our participation level is so low that those things would be nice, but it's not going to fix the problem. What we need is like 80% participation, which is a ridiculous number, right? Like I'm just like shooting for the stars. But if we had 80% participation, our government would look so much different than what it looks like right now. So to me, we have this huge flood of people who have just given up on the system. Another sort of like kind of touching up on that of things that I've seen of people who are so cynically like disgusted with the system that for New Jersey during my election, we had all mail-in, right? So every single person got a mail-in ballot, right? Great thing. Some people wrote the most ridiculous things in the write-in. So I saw a ballot come back that for president was like Jesus, for vice president was Satan, for congressman was like, you know, something else ridiculous. And this person took the time to fill that out, put it in a mailbox and send it in to tell your elected officials, like, I have so much disdain for what you are doing that I will literally send a ridiculous ballot back to you. We have to fix that problem of like people just don't have any faith in the system itself.
Yeah, and one thing that I've noticed just covering politics is when it comes to just views, and I use views as a gauge for how engaged people are, especially young people, because my audience is usually younger. So usually during election times, you see lots and lots of people tuning in for the first time ever, getting involved in politics. And then when the election is over, views kind of fall off a cliff. And I view that as an indication of people losing interest in politics more general. Some people just need a break. I totally get that. But I feel like there's a lot of people that kind of like, they jump in and then they jump right back out. And my question is, because it really seems like the panel is gravitating towards, so far with who we've heard, that, you know, you definitely need a healthy dose of both, but it's really easy to become, you know, just overcome with cynicism. And so the question that I want to ask to Riverboat Jack is, like, if you're like a newer person, because your audience, I'm assuming, is super young, like if you're a newer person and you're super excited about a candidate, Bernie Sanders, and then they lose, our entire movement like just burns out in spectacular fashion. How do you keep them engaged? Because this is a question that I've been asking myself, and I genuinely have no idea. Like, I try to hello fellow kids them as much as I can, throw in fun memes and stuff. But at the end of the day, sometimes it's just like too painful in a way to like be aware of all of the horrible things, climate apocalypse, global pandemic. So like, what do you do as a Twitch streamer to try to keep people engaged? Because I find this to be one of the most difficult things ever.
So first off, I totally relate with the Bernie Sanders and like feeling hopeless, because that's basically where I was in 2020 after he got knocked out of the primary. And, you know, I went and voted Biden and whatever, but like inside I was like, man, this was really our last shot to like really avert some bad stuff that's coming down the pipeline. And I realized my options were either to sit and essentially be inert and not do anything, or to get off up my butt and actually put my money where my mouth is, you know, take the jump, do this, even if no one's going to listen. And it turned out a lot of people wanted to listen. And it's not just young people who come to watch my channel. I have older people across the spectrum. I have parents who watch me who talk about their struggles raising their kids. And I have, you know, members of my mod team who are, you know, in their 60s. And the amount of support that I have seen around this community blows me away. And I think what it really comes down to is tapping into what fundamentally made Bernie Sanders so powerful and influential, and that's giving somebody out there hope. Because like to what Hector was talking about, a lot of people are just absolutely crippled by hopelessness and despair, and they don't think there's anyone out there who's going to help them or who's going to care about their struggles. And what I've found is building these communities where people can talk about their problems, where people can get both emotional support and, if needed, financial support too. Like, there are members of our community who've talked about how they've gone like a week without food, and my community comes together, makes sure that those people get fed, and so the important thing is that in this world where we do have a climate apocalypse, where we do have kind of this rising specter of fascism, is to be able to correctly identify those problems, but then to give people actionable things that they can do that are going to make a difference, either in an electoral sense or in a mutual aid sense, which is why you cannot disconnect these two things. The mutual aid is important to mobilizing electoral support, and the electoral support is key to getting mutual aid support. These two things feed each other, and when we're talking about that, I mean, if you can't get people to do something as simple as going out to vote, it's going to be a lot harder to get them to do things that are harder, and a lot of mutual aid is really hard. So you got to be able to do both things, and different people are good at different things. What is your skill set? And that's what I talk about on my channel a lot. Think about what you can do and how that can benefit people. And if that's more on the electoral side, there are ways you can get involved here, like XYZ. Here are things you can do to get involved at a local level or even higher levels. And if your skill set is more like, I don't know, like cooking ribs or something, like there are ways you can do that too to help in your communities. And so it's just giving people things that they can do that give them a sense of agency and a sense of hope.
Yeah, it goes back to what Harvey said before about unionization. There's really no strong left without unions. And I feel like, in a way, these communities that we've all kind of built individually, either online or on the ground, they kind of serve that social role that unions and like more community support served before, where, it's helping at least a little bit. We're all still like somewhat isolated in our own bubbles, but I do feel like leftists have built communities. They're relatively fragmented, but at the same time, I do think that is a really important and insightful thing that you mentioned, Riverboat Jack. I wanted to bring in Pix here with the Australian perspective, because we talk about like people jumping into elections and then tuning right back out, and this always kind of brings me back to, how do you increase participation? And to me, I feel like the number one way to do that is to model our voting process after Australia's, more so when it comes to compulsory voting. So in Australia, you have to vote. So, I mean, can you explain, what does that do? Like, what effect does that have? Because I know you have a higher participation rate in your country, but do people kind of just like vote and then tune back out, or do they stay engaged because of them being required to vote? Like, can you speak to this here? Because I'm trying to think about like, what does keep people engaged? Does forcing them to stay involved in politics help? If so, then maybe we can advocate for that. Like, what's your thoughts on this?
It's actually really interesting, and it's a bit of a spectrum, because while it is kind of compulsory voting, you have to enroll to vote when you turn 18. If you don't enroll, it kind of just like goes under the thing. But a lot of people, even though there is compulsory voting, are still extremely disengaged and will still do the kind of generational voting thing where it's just like, my parents voted Labor, so I will vote Labor. That being said, we do have a actual Labor Party here in Australia, which is kind of center left. But even though there is kind of there's a stronger union movement here in Australia, I think, than you see in America, it's still a very divided left, right? Because we have the Labor Party and we have the Greens Party. And all over the spectrum, in every state, there sometimes can be a Greens person that is more progressive than a Labor, or they can be a very progressive, like Labor senator, or, there's all sorts of kind of mix and match throughout all of the parties. So even though you can be engaged to like a specific level, you have to be really following it to like learn about the policies of these people. I think one of the things where we get really lost in regards to like electoral politics in general is the frustration that people feel that their vote doesn't matter, right? Even if it's a compulsory vote, people still go in and they're like, it's the same side of a different coin. Which is why I appreciate everyone's opinion on this panel so far, because I think what is key is the motivating of people to really feel like they are engaged in their community. And in order to be able to do that, there does have to be this sense of hope for change. And I think by encouraging people to really commit to at least politics on a community level is something that would be really important going forward in an American context, through mutual aid, through electoralism, but it's really focusing it down to the community level where things are tangible, where you can see differences. Maybe you're affecting the environmental policy in your local area. And I think that helps people stay involved a little bit more than what you see on the internet, where we're all having these big global conversations that are also divisive because it's so good for the algorithm for people to have strong opinions on different things. Whereas, we're all arguing for the same, 95% of things. We all want the same. But we get really, kind of different. So I just love the nuance here. And I think that you can't leave power on the table, but in order to motivate people to be engaged, you have to kind of participate in mutual aid
Yeah, I like that.
Organizations. Yeah.
Yeah, no, that's really insightful.
Wait, one more thing. You can also basically just bribe people to vote with a democracy sausage, which is kind of what we do here. Like you go down to vote, and it's like, vote and you can have a snag. Here you go.
Okay.
I was going to say we should incentivize voting in America.
I would be more enthusiastic.
That was exactly what corrupted American democracy in the 19th century. People would show up to vote and they'd get a beer before they voted.
Well, you got to give it to him after, obviously.
Yeah, so I wanted to get Hildy's perspective as well, because you're from Canada. I know there's an election taking place currently, and you've kind of always done both. You've done direct action. You've also participated in electoral politics. What's your overall take in this? Because you're raising a new generation of anarchists. Like you said that you came from multi-generations of anarchists. So what is your take here on this?
Well, I live in Alberta, Canada, so my perspective is a little bit different. It doesn't really matter where my heart lies. It's because the riding, they're called ridings. In the United States, you have districts. In my riding, it has always voted conservative. So my vote really doesn't count. And that's because we have first past the post system, and it's broken.
Yep.
And I have done both. The mutual aid, absolutely, there is a place for that, and I fully endorse that. With respect to direct action, yeah, it moves the needle. I get it. However, I feel, and despite having value in that, I feel, though, that we should consolidate our efforts in both. But I think I would lean towards more to strategically place people in key positions, whether it be school trustee, city councilor, get on any types of boards, councils, be a mayor, get in the legislative assembly, be a member of parliament, any one of those things. Get appointed as a judge. Those are key positions, and basically stack the deck. It takes so many leftists to apply to get elected so that one person can actually be sitting at the table. There's right now going on anti-abortion groups who are incredibly organized. incredibly strategically motivated. They are putting people in all of the parties because we have a multi-party system. It's not like the United States where you basically got your Republican and Democrat. You know, you're both right wing that you choose. We have a variety here. They're almost all right wing with the exception of one. That's basically all that we have. So the left in Canada has literally nowhere else to go. And with these anti-abortion groups that are getting together and placing people strategically in all the parties or in municipal elections so that they can sit on council, so that they can be mayors, so that they can be on swim boards or hockey boards or what have you. That is incredibly terrifying to me because you guys in the United States will remember, back when in the olden days when the Tea Party was in, and the damage that did. People were motivated years before the Tea Party came in. That's going on right now. There's a lot of anti-abortion. And basically when voting comes down to the nitty-gritty, it's always on abortion. And so I think we need to be smarter on the left by doing this. I think that we need to be more aware. We need to engage more. We need to rub elbows with those that are doing the direct action so that we can put ourselves in specific and strategic places of power. There's a poll that came out. Nearly 40% of the federal Conservative Party of Canada that were elected, nearly 40% were endorsed by these anti-abortion groups. And these anti-abortion groups are incredibly funded. They are very motivated to get monies, and they will back a lot of people, whether it's somebody who wants to be a mayor candidate. And I mean, right now, it's so depressing living in Alberta. It really is. It's so depressing. And in fact, just last night, I was contacted by one of the parties, and I was asked for their support. And they said, you know what we need? We need you to back us by maxing out your credit. And I'll use that in quotes because that's a direct quote. Maxing out my credit. And I'm thinking, where have we gone? This is not right. The right is basically not playing the same game that the left is playing. We need to get in the game, and we need to be strategically smart about it. Otherwise, we're going to lose because we've been losing for a long time.
Yeah, that dynamic that you're describing is super familiar here to me, in the United States. And I wanted to bring in Dan because, there's this question, is the conservatives everywhere just better at politics? Like, I mean, the fact that we're having this conversation about does electoralism matter and to what extent does it matter when like basically 100% of Republicans, they all believe it matters and they still participate. They're still effective. Like, is there something that I'm missing here? Like, are conservatives just out politicking us? Like, what's your take on this? Because I feel so frustrated. And I feel like if we could replicate what the right did, albeit on the left, then maybe we, could be successful. But then like to replicate that, we'd need what they have, which is capital. And we just don't have that. So I'm like, it feels relatively hopeless, kind of speaking to what like Hilda was talking about. But what's your thoughts on this, Dan?
Many thoughts. I think the answer to the first part of your question about why is the right getting so powerful. I was just talking about this on Power Report with one of my regular guests, a brilliant person, Yasmin Aliyah Khan, and she was talking about how in Texas, on the state level, Republicans have just been running a warpath, and it's not just like in Texas as alone in this. There's a lot of states where, on the state and local level, Republicans have just gone gangbusters politically, and so not only are they like doing gangbusters politically, but they, like you alluded to, have the capital to be able to, anytime they need to bus protesters to a given area to protest any little bit of leftist action, they're able to do so. And of course, they have the police behind their back. And as we mentioned earlier, of course, they have the local state and local officials behind their back. And so, of course, I'm not teaching this panel anything because we've all kind of got this pretty clear. But the idea of the dichotomy between do you do electoralism versus direct action? I've got news for you. No Republican asks themselves that question. No one on the right asks themselves that question. They do it. They do it, and that's why they're effective. And one reason, though, I think one romantic reason that's partially true about why, because I wrestle with this all the time, and people on camera and off camera wrestle with this all the time of like, why is it so hard for the left to accomplish what the right is accomplishing, right? At least in gaining political power. And the romanticized answer to that is, well, on the left, we're coalition based and we very much care about our coalitions. And on the right, they're willing to fall in line. They don't care if Donald Trump isn't a real Christian and doesn't live very Christ-like. Mike Pence can still build coalition with him and won't say a word about it and won't talk about the blaring hypocrisy there, because everyone in the evangelical side is supposed to understand the political gains that can be made if you just let Donald Trump kind of in, for example, right? And so on the left, you're supposed to say, oh, well, we're not that coalitionally focused. But I think, to criticize the left a little bit, sometimes ego gets in the way of our ability to see the chessboard and like kind of where we are on the chessboard, how badly we're losing the game here. And I think I'm very much an and person. I'm glad we have this conversation of it can be both electoralism and direct action. But I think there has to be a balance of not sacrificing anyone's status or marginalized groups or individuals' like abilities to have their say and have their voice, but also being able to realize, okay, we need to be strategic in certain times when how we gain power, because ultimately we do want the same things. We want to achieve the same things and achieve a more equal, just society for everyone. And so in coalition building like that and putting our individual egos aside, as much as we put our identities and our politics within those egos, only then can we start to gain power. Because we like to consider conservatives as like being full of egos and things like that, but at least they can set their own personal egos aside for the whole coalition to gain power. And that's a tough pill to swallow for the left, but I think that's the best, at least I've articulated it, as to where we need to kind of figure it out, if that makes sense.
Can I add a little bit to that too?
I was going to go ahead.
Sure.
Because we talked a little bit about abortion, and I think that there are fundamentally different motivators for the left and the right in this country and elsewhere too, right? Like, if you are willing to believe that your political opponents are killing millions upon millions of babies every year, and you believe that with all of your heart, right? You're going to show up to vote. You're going to show up, you're going to mobilize to do these things. And I don't think we necessarily have the same kind of fire in our bellies, you know, that a lot of these pro-life people, ostensibly pro-life people do, right? And like this goes into how like the Southern strategy tapped into how the religious fervor and belief of evangelicals. And that is something that has remained really elusive for the left to emulate in any way. And I think it is worth having a conversation like, can we do the same thing that the right has done? And if we can, I don't think it looks the same as the Southern strategy, you know, like the left can't tap into QAnon, you know, like we can't peddle in conspiracy the same way, which frankly hampers us because it links us down to a reality in a way that the right doesn't necessarily have to for its political figures.
It's also very uncomfortable to criticize the right because sometimes you feel the need to be like, oh, you're getting diddled by a conspiracy, right? And that comes off condescending. So it's very much, how do you even get on a platform to have these conversations, you know, like they can kind of just go.
Well, and I mean, to a large degree, some people on the right have really been inoculated against arguments, you know, against their own conspiracy theories. I mean, to Riverboat's point, I mean, if you really feel that being pro-life or voting for Trump or whatever is a matter of, I mean, saving unborn babies. You can't just call these people crazy. I mean, you can, and they are, but you have to take into account that they really truly believe that. If you are watching Fox News all day and they're beating you over the head with this idea that, you know, actually critical race theory is super racist. Well, you've been inoculated against any argument, you know, against the idea that you actually are supporting racists. And when people call you out or say, you know, I think you are racist, or I think you are at least amenable to racists, then they say, well, you know what? Laura Ingraham warned me that you were going to say that, and this is actually proof that I'm right.
Yeah. We have a big problem also with letting like the idea of like the perfect candidate get in the way of like a really good one. We get super picky, and I don't understand that at all. Like sometimes there's people that are shitty and you don't want them to be part of your movement because they, you know, they're just bad people. But like, you know, Bernie Sanders having a summer house is not one of those things that we need to worry about. Yet that comes up when he runs. So like, I don't know why that's a thing that we engage with. I think there's a big problem with branding as well. I think just like the way we talk about things, there's a lot of people who really want to get into the nitty gritty of like I don't know, Marxist like theory with people that don't even understand like the basics of capitalism and yet are still like I'm a full capitalist. Like we need to calm down on some of the stuff that we think we know about. Like we feel like we're smart, and a lot of us are very smart, but like we really want to tell people we're smart. And so to the ego thing, like I don't know what that's about. We have to be able to communicate in a clear way that doesn't use scary words for people. Like the idea of anarchy. What do people think of when we say I'm an anarcho anything? They think Molotov cocktails. And frankly, maybe they ought to. But sometimes that's not beneficial to the idea of just being like, oh, I'm pro anarchy. Like, and I think most people, if you tell them what it is, like if you didn't give them the title, they'd be like, oh, that sounds like kind of fine. That sounds like a nice community and whatever. But like we have a huge problem with just the way that we have disparate messaging. Republicans have like this vast news apparatus. I mean, just conservatives at large, where they're kind of always on the same message, and they do this thing where a lot of us consider it a grift, and it is definitely down once you get down to the YouTube level. But like Ben Shapiro will make a video, and then everybody in the Daily Wire will make that same video, and then everybody on Fox News will pick up that video, and then everybody on Twitter is talking about that same topic. And so you'll see no kink at Pride discourse for a month. And it's like, this isn't important. This is obfuscating like the actual important things. Meanwhile, they go and they pass like really harmful things in National Congress or the Texas bill that we weren't really talking about that until it happened. Like we were like, oh, this might come down the pipe. We're worried about the Supreme Court and stuff, like when Trump was there. And then it sort of went away for a little bit because people get complacent. And I think we need some sort of like counter propaganda. Cause I mean, really what Fox News is and all of that is like just a propaganda arm of the Republicans, whether they realize they're working for them or not. It's like we could get by. CNN is not doing it. You know what I mean? MSNBC is not doing it for leftists. Definitely not. So, yeah.
To quickly just like, sorry, just real quick. In there, you had a really good point about Bernie Sanders' house, makes him not a good candidate. And it's just, I think that part of the rhetoric that a lot of people on the left engage in overly focuses on hypocrisy. Yeah. Because it makes us feel really superior to be like, that Republican just did something very hypocritical. And it's, it's funny in like a Twitter haha sense, but like it has gotten to the point where it no longer feels really real to people. Like it's not like a real criticism, and it feels abstract from reality. And because it's not proposing like an actual criticism other than, you said one thing and did another. And we need to make things real for people, whether that is in the conversation about direct action and mutual aid and how it relates to electoralism, whether it is in our rhetoric for trying to reach liberals or unradicalized folks, or whether it's talking about Republicans. We need to move away and improve our rhetoric and critique in these regards.
What I was going to throw into the conversation is like, Mike, you asked, why is it that Republicans have held on to so much power for so long and the left seems to have this intractable nature of like not being able to be as successful? And I think that Hilda really hit the nail on the head as to where the left goes from here and what the future holds for us. And like for Bojack said, is like, we have to nail it down to reality. If you look at your community, there are all these like really unsexy positions on your zoning board, on your school board, on your, like, I myself, after the election, was able to get appointed to the planning board in my municipality. There, I can fight for affordable housing. I can fight back against developers who are gentrifying. That's how the right was able to hold on to power. Like, we need to send the left into your communities and take over all these local board positions. And 10, 15, 20 years down the line, all of a sudden now we have a leftist government because we've been sort of getting in at the ground level of all these places. And that's where I think personally the left goes from here. And that's how we get the power in the future that the right seems to have now.
Yeah. Really, I just really fast on that. While we're focused on what the left doesn't have and what we were talking about that, and just as Hector was coming into what the left can actually combat with this, because I love presenting solutions, especially in this space where we have audiences where we're talking to them on the internet, and we love these audiences, but ultimately it can feel like it's just us, the person on the other side of the screen, and the screen. We want to kind of give them solutions. At least I want to try to. And what I sort of going towards local action and direct action, this is now the before times, but for folks who are on the panel who have done door-to-door knocking and canvassing and things like that, you'll actually understand that there's something beautiful in the fact that no American has any consistent political opinions. Like, they're all over the place. Like, I think maybe the same thing is true across the board. Like, no one fits neatly, usually, except for extreme hyper partisans, in a left or right box. You can kind of talk them into any sort of direction when you like kind of remove the least crazy people from the Fox News, MSNBC, CNN echo chambers. Because in reality, these echo chambers, Twitter is only used by 3% of Americans. The best night of Rachel Maddow or CNN is still half of like a boring sporting event. In reality, not many people are paying attention to this. So you can kind of use leftist opportunities as a blank canvas to show people, like by doing school board, by doing any kind of local thing like that, how leftist government can actually work, so that people have a living example to go against the propaganda that you see online. And also just like the connection between mutual aid, and people say, oh, mutual aid, direct action, do this, Venmo this person, cash out this person. It's kind of less about what you're doing online. It's all important because like these people's lives are tangibly improved by this. But when you are visible in a community and you're helping them out, whether you're like passing out frozen water bottles to unhoused people in the like hot summer or whatever, you are visible in a community and you are building trust with that community. So when you come back around and you keep helping them, and then when those times you come back around and say, hey, there's an election happening, I know like we've been like hanging out and we gotten to know each other and we started to know about the things you care about. Do you trust me on supporting these people who I trust and will make your lives better? That's where the mutual aid, the direct action starts to combine with the electoralism, and you can actually do both. So I encourage anyone watching this, convince other people like that's the connection that needs to be made to turn the tide with these things.
One more tiny little thing is also the language that we use. Like, the language that we use is so important because sometimes conservative language is so much easier to digest, right? It's fear-based, it's simple. And sometimes I feel like there are people who aren't overly engaged in leftist discourse who might not even know what the term mutual aid or direct action even means, which is basically just like helping those in need. that's it, right? So we really need to focus on like simplifying the language. And I think that's something that Bernie Sanders was attempting to do in the Democratic primaries. Like he really did simplify his language. And that's why Trump was so appealing to the Republican Party, because he was speaking to a group of disengaged people who could understand what he was saying in very simplistic terms. I mean, we were sitting there going like, what? Sorry, what did it? But a lot of other people were sitting there being like, oh, okay, that makes sense to me. I can understand that. And I feel like sometimes on the left, we get lost in the theoretical and don't focus on the practical enough.
Yeah.
I also think maybe getting into politics at a local level can feel daunting to a lot of people, especially on the left, like especially the leftists. A lot of us are laborers. Like some of us are streamers. We're very, very fortunate to be able to do this job. But a lot of people that agree with us are like, poor. And I was very poor. And that's kind of what radicalized me and started to send me down this path. Like, this is a shitty system. This does not work. I also think this might not be a very popular opinion. Maybe we should stop using words they're scared of, like socialism, and maybe just use words like labor. Like maybe. And just to warm them up a little bit to the idea, because when you say that in America, I don't know how it works other places, but when you say that in America, they go, nope, that Mao killed people. And it's like, what are we talking about? I'm not Mao. What? Like, I'm talking about a totally different thing. I'm talking about like this specific, like, here's what I want. And you're like, just, I don't know, it sounds like a thing that's bad. And so, like, I think if we form it, like, there's already labor movements in the United States in a lot of ways. Like, I live in Michigan, which is a huge union place for auto workers and stuff, and a lot of the Midwest is sort of like that. A lot of factories and stuff, although it dwindled over time. But people like United Auto Workers Union, the UAW, is very strong here to different efficacies, but like. Just the idea of like having a workers union or a labor party, like the idea of that, and maybe branding it as we're because it really is. It's about labor and about the interaction that labor has with capital and all the things that work its way up. So I don't know. I also think it's like I said, like it's just a daunting aspect for some people to think about the idea of like. All the stuff that's on their plate, they're working like at least one job, maybe more, to make ends meet, paycheck to paycheck, to maybe run a political campaign to be like their comptroller. Like, so
well,
I don't know how to get them all to do that.
This circles back around to something I briefly mentioned, which is like play to your skill set.
Yeah.
Like if you know how to grill, that makes it a lot easier to go out and grill for people, like in the wake of a disaster. People need food. Or like if you have an affect that is really resonating in more conservative areas, more rural areas, then maybe you're a better candidate to talk to one of those people than I am as a trans lady. There are people who are better or worse at different things, and we should play to our various strengths, because I think the left has a lot of diverse strengths. And like, just as off the top of my head, like Beau of the Fifth Column does a really good job at reaching like rural, more conservative types. And it is through his word choices and his affect. And that is really successful and something I couldn't do, even though we both do similar things. And so it is okay to play to your strengths, I think, and to let people play to theirs.
Yeah. We're kind of like almost, I feel like this conversation is very productive because you all are kind of offering solutions to people. And it's hard to get people motivated. Like I always say that, like, trying to get leftists to do anything, it's like herding cats. Like it's really difficult. And so the final person that I'm going to bring in here is Professor Harvey. This is the question that I want to ask to you. Has it always been this difficult? Like, you are a teacher of history. Has it always been like this? Has there always been like this I don't know, motivation deficit on the left, or is this like a new phenomenon that is, the result of like social media? But like, what is your take on this? Are we kind of just seeing history repeat itself, or is this like a uniquely new thing for this era in terms of like people having to really be remotivated and talked up to get involved in direct action, what have you?
Well, the first thing to understand is that social media is very late to this whole question. I mean, what we've seen has been underway for, I'm going to use a round number, 45 years of nothing less than class war from above that was very effective back in the 70s in mobilizing as well Christian evangelicals in particular. So, and there are ways in which that, that's a whole lecture basically, but you've got to believe me, this goes well back into the 70s. And what's really kind of interesting is that there are many public statements and records that doesn't require a lot of research. There was a declaration of war, issued essentially in a number of ways between 1971 and 75, which actually named the targets. Okay. For example, it named Poor People's Movement, it named the labor movement, it named especially public employee unionism, it named young people, it named the women's movement. It laid out every single movement that came out of the 60s. They laid out as the sort of grand problem, and it was put most effectively in a little thing called the crisis of democracy. And somebody mentioned conspiracies before. There was no conspiracy here. It was a group called the Trilateral Commission. It was made up of literally every single major figure, political and business, from Western Europe, the United States, and Japan, who was not at that time currently holding office. And this included George H.W. Bush, Jimmy Carter. It was put together by David Rockefeller as a big new Brzezinski. This was a major public organization. And the section, basically, it was sort of authored from the American perspective by a man named Samuel Huntington, a professor at Harvard. And he said, we have a crisis of democracy because we have an excess of democracy. And what we have to do is we need to reduce democracy. And as I said, he pointed out all the culprits. Now, out of this kind of declaration of war, which had nothing to do, by the way, with the hard right at that time, but in the course of that decade, the Democrats were so utterly emptied of any kind of real politics by way of Jimmy Carter that you had the emergence of both this kind of corporate Democratic politics as well as the right-wing Republican Party emerged. So this all begins back in the 70s, long before anything called social media. Hell, I remember in the early 90s or 80s, whenever it was, being fascinated by the fax machine. Okay. So I don't think it's a matter of that. I think what it is that literally they targeted, I don't mean to sound like a broken, they targeted labor in the 70s. The fastest growing enterprise probably in the 70s was the union busting law firm. And the high point of that, or the culmination of that, was the PATCO strike, which was 40 years ago this year, in which Ronald Reagan fired the thousands upon thousands of air traffic controllers who were on strike. It's a whole tragic story in itself. But you've got that war basically on the working class that began in the 70s. And it literally was articulated in a way that it included the war on voting rights. It included a war on women's rights to control their own bodies. I mean, they really were very, very effective. And what was the left? Well, it was in fact splintered. Identity politics splintered it. Young and old splintered it. I've been a member of DSA for as long as I can remember, but I sure as hell wouldn't run around saying vote socialist, because it's just not going to win the day. But I do think, and by the way, I think Bernie Sanders blew it when he insisted on calling himself a democratic socialist. I also think he blew it because he literally was an FDR Democrat and ignored the whole tradition. What I'm getting at is that the left is such a mess. Mm-hmm. It is such a mess. And I'll just close because you guys are the young ones who are the young left media. The young left media is failing itself. Somebody talked about the message goes out. And there's, what is it called? The message goes out and every right-wing voice says the same thing, whether it's Ben Shapiro or Hannity, it's all the same. Okay. Now on the left, there's so much diversity on the left, which is in itself great, but it's also the case that there's no vision coming out of the left.
Yeah.
Okay.
No.
Look, I think single thing all of you have said is true. I mean, I wouldn't take issue with any one of them, but it's also the case. Tell me what the vision of the left is. What is the vision for the left? What would be the good America or the good Western world, the good global picture? And I haven't even talked about the climate crisis, which literally could fuck us all.
Right.
Yeah, sure. I actually think we're fortunate to have the one thing Americans desire most from a politician's mouth, and that's the word freedom. I think we offer the most like just livable freedom from our politics that's out there, whether it comes to like just the idea of just the healthcare issue, the freedom to go to any hospital, to any doctor in any network that wouldn't exist at any time for any reason without cost out of pocket is more freedom than having a very specific limited insurance in your specific doctor in your specific space. So even to that, I think we have this thing, the idea of freedom that's been co-opted by the right, that I think we could rally around to some extent. Most leftists agree. I think that if that was our, for lack of a better term, like one of the 10 commandments of whatever we want to run as, if that was like number one up there, freedom to live however your life is, and this goes to the trans argument, this goes to gun ownership. You know, leftists aren't necessarily against being able to have guns, so that's not even really a thing we have to like wrest from. You know, it's not like a liberal thing. It's not like Joe Biden, they're going to take our guns. It's like, okay, have your guns then. But so did the black communities, and so did the gay communities, and so does everybody else. And you can't bully these people. So like, there's lots of things that I think we could get out of just co-opting that word.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm going to make a point by way of.
Please do.
And you know, the United States literally led the way in social democracy. Mm-hmm. I mean, we don't even think how many people were ever told that public education is the first major social democratic initiative in the world, and it started here. Mm-hmm. How many people were ever told that national parks are social democratic? Because in most other countries, they were royal parks, right? It begins here. I mean, it's over and over again, this kind of, lack of a better way of putting it, this kind of amnesia. But it's also the case, and this is what I'm going to hold against your generation, no less, is the fact that literally there is no talk of what should be the talk, and that is that there is that what makes America in its better sense, as opposed to its darkest sense, in the sense of this dystopian moment that really, you know, I ask myself, dystopian. I don't really think of this as dystopian because it's happened before, but that just means we've had a lot of dystopian moments, and for vast numbers of people, dystopia was the state of the land. Okay,
yeah,
and it remains that. But it is the case that, look, I mean, we literally have seen tremendous historic, not just historical, but historic victories, and how dare the right hijack history ever since Reagan? And where is it? Where is the left in terms of taking back the story? That I'm not looking for a Pollyanna story. What I'm looking at is, and I'm not even going to deny the worst exploitation and oppression. That's part of it. But the real story that needs to be told is that struggles do matter. I think it was A. Philip Randolph. You know, nothing is. Or Frederick Douglass may have said it first. Nothing is won without struggle. You know, or as A. Philip Randolph said, freedom isn't given, it's won. I mean, but you have to remind people. But by the way, I'm correcting myself about something. Walter Benjamin of the Frankfurt School once said, you know, basically, it's not a vision of the future that will motivate the struggle. It's seeking revenge for one's grandparents and what they suffered. That's the thing that always checks my arguments. Okay, but it is the case that history is a very powerful intellectual and rhetorical weapon, and we just aren't wielding it.
Yeah. Well, folks, what I want to do now is we'll give the panelists a 2.5-minute break. We're going to cut to our featured content creator of the week, the final featured content creator of the show, and then we will get to our last question. And we're kind of like headed here, right? Like this is kind of gravitating towards a critique of the modern left. I'm included in this. We're all included in this. You know, we're definitely including ourselves. But yeah, we'll be right back, folks. This is our featured content creator. It is Christina.
Dystopian Times.
Hello, my name is Christina, aka I'm Christina, and I am a Twitch streamer. A lot of the stuff that I stream on Twitch is mostly political. I also dabble into talking about pop culture, music, movies, comics, just about anything. Pretty much just chatting. I also dabble into cosplaying. I like showing off my cosplays and I want to encourage people to cosplay more. The reason why I'm doing this Twitch streaming is because my father died from lung cancer back in May. So it's just my mother and I. And we have full-time jobs, we clean houses for a living, and we cannot do that forever. My mother shouldn't have to do that forever. She should be able to retire even before she reaches the retirement age. So I'm doing all this for her. She doesn't understand it completely, but she's getting there. And I do hope that I create a community that's very inclusive, friendly. I really want a lot of leftists to get to know each other, to connect, and that's what I really hope for. I do hope to make this my full-time job eventually. I'm still new, I'm just still starting, so I'm gonna get there though. I just gotta keep pushing and keep trying. It hasn't been easy, but things are looking up. I also like to talk about my mental health a lot, because I really want to make sure that people feel safe and that they know that they can depend on, you know, each other. And also too, I like to show off my cat Frankie. He's meowing right now because he knows I'm recording a video. Lastly, I would just like to thank Mike for platforming me and giving me a chance. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. Besides, just, you know, feel free to follow me on Twitch, or even maybe if you think I'm good enough, you can feel free to subscribe. I try to stream almost every day, and yeah, hopefully, you know, you like what I put out.
Well, folks, that was Christina. There will be links in the description box if you're watching this on YouTube. Her streams are fantastic. She just did a cosplay of, who is it? Harley Quinn? That's the Batman character, right? Yeah, Harley Quinn. I can't believe I'm forgetting that. It's like my favorite character in Batman. But she did a great Harley Quinn cosplay. I mean, all around a phenomenal person. Her tweets are also on point. So, what was that? Sorry.
That's Harv.
Okay, so, folks.
Oh no.
There we go. Okay. So be sure to subscribe to and support Christina. So I want to move on to the second topic. This is kind of what we all touched on in the first part of the show. And this is a question that's incredibly awkward and uncomfortable, but I think it's really important that we address this because we're all thinking it, but not a lot of people are saying it, or they're saying it, but they're kind of like pointing the finger. And this is the question that I want to ask the panel. Is the left too dysfunctional to succeed without leadership? Because we all know that after Bernie 2020, the left has been a mess, as Harvey said. There's been nonstop infighting. Grifters, pseudo-leftists have risen up as de facto leaders of certain leftist factions. There's disagreement on strategy, disagreement on policy priorities. There's even disagreement on voting. If you vote for, Joe Biden, or if you vote third party, are you an ally? Are you a comrade? All of these questions have become so divisive, and this is why I asked the question. Are we able to accomplish anything and unite at all without a leader? Does there have to be like some sort of a leader that rises up, be it Nina Turner, AOC, or do you think that as grown adults, one day we'll be able to come together and recognize that the apocalypse is near, and we might want to get our shit together? Spencer, I want to go to you first because you focus a lot on media critique, and I don't necessarily know that there's a lot that the media itself has done in terms of like leading to leftist disunity. But one thing that I was kind of thinking about is, do you think there's any, and I'm kind of asking you to psychoanalyze leftists, but we're all doing this here. Do you think that like this idea that leftists feel excluded from the mainstream? Like, you know, there's the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, both right and center right, but leftists are kind of left out on their own. So do you think that this sense that like we're outcasts has anything to do with it? And this sense that like, okay, well, if my identity is outcast, then I'm more outcast than you. I'm more left than you. I'm more this than you. Give me your take on this, because my thoughts are scattered and I feel frustrated. And even when I try to recommend leftists do something good, like touch grass, and I include myself in that, that's even taken as like an attack. So what are your thoughts on this? Because I feel like it's really discouraging to see what's taking place right now.
Yeah, I mean, I think for one thing, your view of politics and what the left is probably very different if you aren't ever on Twitter.
Right.
So that's one thing.
So true.
There does seem to be this game of on the left where you know, the core project is like proving your intransigence, and whoever can be the most intransigent, you know, is the most left. You know, if as a leftist you can talk about how it's hypocritical for Bernie Sanders to have, you know, a nice house, then you've won the game, and that's the real project. That's politics. But yeah, I mean, I think there's definitely a sense that leftists are left out of mainstream media. I mean, I remember when Rising came on the scene and Crystal Ball was being compared to Rachel Maddow. She was, you know, the left's Rachel Maddow. You know, can these movements ever really get off the ground without serious media? I mean, I don't know. And then that kind of comes back to the question of journalism and local journalism just being gutted. I mean, newsrooms are at like half capacity in the last 20 years. A lot of counties and districts don't even have local papers. And then sort of going back to the previous question, I wanna flip the prompt a little bit from should we focus more on electoral politics or mutual aid and direct action? What do people think about phrasing it more as focusing on federal or local? Because I think local politics, state and local politics and city politics, the direct action and electoralism are much more intertwined. You know, I don't know how DSA works in other states, but for New York DSA has gotten a lot of wins. And that's all been on the state and local level. I mean, in Albany, there are 6 socialists, and they call themselves socialists. For city council, and, you know, New York City Council, a city council district in New York has 100,000 people in it. So that's no joke. There are at least two socialists. I mean, people who call themselves socialists who are going to go to City Hall in January. And they're very, New York DSA, they're very judicious on who they endorse and the races they get into. I mean, they were involved in Bernie, obviously, but I think that's a one-off. Whoever runs in 2024, I mean, unless it's Rashida Tlaib, they're not going to be interested in. They focus on races that they, you know, can feasibly win, and they've done a lot of work. And then those races and the issues that those people are involved in, you know, are necessarily local. So I would say, and I'm sorry, I guess this is really answering the last question, but I would say if you have the wherewithal, if you're watching this, I would say feel free to ignore federal politics, other than, you know, voting for not Trump, I guess.
Right.
If he wins.
Yeah. No, I think that's a good point about the federal versus local. I think that is a really important distinction, and it's important to kind of like draw those lines for people who, don't necessarily know any better, or they tune in and then tune back out. Yeah. There's my thoughts on the issue in terms of leftist infighting. It also does go back to electoralism, where there's this sense that if somebody is focused on electoralism, that's negative, or if they're only focused on direct action, that's negative. And I feel like we have to be really open about doing this in a number of ways, right? Like I kind of am for this kitchen sink approach where we throw everything at the wall and see what sticks. Let's just try everything so we can try to be successful. Direct action, electoralism, everything we possibly can do. But it's kind of getting to the point where leftist factionalization has almost become a hindrance. And I'm wondering, like, to what point do we really turn into our own worst enemies? Like one thing that I've really been concerned about is, like, are we making ourselves look bad to the normies? Because part of my project is I really want to convert normies. But if I see, like,
then don't use the word normie.
Yeah, might help.
I promise I won't use it outside of this context. But it's
we
like,
want average
so
morons like you people.
Yeah.
You rubes.
Yeah, I mean, it's like when I see some of the discourse that takes place on Twitter, and don't discourse on Twitter, as Demon Mama says, don't ever do discourse on Twitter. But when I see it happen, I think, man, if one of my normie, like, liberal friends saw this, they'd think that leftists are absolutely fucking insane. So I kind of feel like we all need to give ourselves a pep talk. And Hector, you've stayed busy and above the fray as the leftists kind of like shit the bed everywhere. Like, what's your take on this? Because my thoughts are really scattered, and I'm just trying to like find some way to like unite leftists that are still on the left, that are well intentioned. And I don't necessarily know that there's any one magic bullet, but in your opinion, like, what would help? Do you think that we need a leader, or is it like climate change? Like, is it a policy? Like, what are your thoughts on this? Sorry, that's super broad, but it's just, there's so much like with this topic.
No, and I see a lot of the same discourse that you see, and I'm frustrated by it as well. And like, ostensibly, the answer to your question, in my opinion, is that yes. Like, it would be nice, because the strongest I've ever seen us react as a movement is when there was a strong leader there in 2016, 2020, when Bernie was doing it, even 2018 when AOC was running for the first time. That's when I really saw the left act in a way that your normie friends would be like, wow, these people look like a legitimate political movement that's on the rise. And the thing about the left, and we touched on this before, is that we're just going to have a higher standard for who those leaders are. We're not going to fall in line to the extent that the right does and say, well, we can sell this person off enough to the normies, so let's stick with this person. Our leader, whoever it is, will, and I think that it'll have to be something, just because of the way the left is, it'll have to be people transitioning in. We won't stick with one leader for too long, because I think that we have a lot of factionalization. People will want to say, we don't want to put the brand on one person for too long. It's almost like if you had like a leftist like Infinity Gauntlet, and like you wanted to give it off to one person, like they can't keep it forever, and eventually you'd probably want them to give it to somebody else. And that's just sort of the way I see it working. But honestly, I do think that the best we've ever been is when we had somebody who was like, at least like vibing enough with the people that you could cause a movement behind them.
Mm-hmm.
A leftist Infinity Gauntlet implies a leftist Avengers. So that's kind of my opinion, is not necessarily a leader, but leaders. Like the civil rights movement, MLK is like who we think of, but there were so many people just for that movement, which obviously led into a broader leftist movement. And I think maybe that would be a good way to go, where you have people like, a Bernie Sanders in there that sometimes is like, clearly like the top person that we're excited about. But would it be the worst thing to ask for any major leftist organizations to like get together in the same space and do a thing and like actually make a
Yeah.
broader movement, because I feel like, you know, we're all very disparate and we interact with each other in ways. And I mean, even in the smaller versions of this, like Twitch communities or YouTube communities, like this kind of thing happens, but most of the time we end up yelling at each other. So like,
Right.
what about like a summit? What couldn't we do something to that effect? Like, I mean, I'm small potatoes as far as like actual political like people things happen, but we know enough people around to like help that out in like part of the appeal that I think our politics have is that we do speak to people that are online and have found out these politics through this way, and we could support these politicians through the kind of virility of social media and Twitch and things like that. Like that could be the way we work, but I think in real life it needs to be like actual major people getting together. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Like we don't have,
Yeah.
and also like we don't, the resources are really disparate, so we don't have money. So like if that happens, that's a way to like pool it. Collectivization is like the core of it. So why don't we actually do that with politics? Why don't we practice what the whole thing is about?
Yeah.
So,
and,
like,
and
have a
I'm
left
wondering,
con, right?
Something
Yeah, that's
maybe.
what-
I don't know how it would work. I'm just saying, like, is this a viable thing? Could LeftCon be a thing? I don't know.
somebody put a comment about LeftCon. I'm trying to find it now. Shout out to that person. But yeah, I mean, like something, right? Sorry, Dan, I kind of cut you off. Go ahead and jump in here.
No, I really want to give folks space, but I mean, I have so much to say about this, especially because I think what we're reflecting at is a time on the left where there's a vacuum essentially of a thing or a movement. I kind of felt like this post Occupy was kind of my kind of radicalizing moment, but after that you sort of had, you had your media figures here and there from it who would eventually become your like Tim Pools, etc. But then you kind of had like no sort of direction as to where this coalition of, you finally had this motivation of saying, oh yeah, leftists were organized and put together, but without any sort of avenue to put that energy. You get, you like in realpolitik, when you get a power vacuum somewhere, you get a lot of bad actors who take advantage of that power vacuum and use their advantage. In realpolitik, it's like military groups with oftentimes like religious undertones, and on YouTube it's Jimmy Dore. But it's the other the main thing I want to get at is like Justice Democrats, for example, is like a good instance of, hey, let's use some lefty media prowess. I mean, it was started with Cenk Uygur and Kyle Kalinske in mind, and I'm gonna ... that there and let people Google the rest of that history. But like, it was the idea of, let's bring on the progressive community on YouTube and on the internet. And this is like 2016, 2017-ish, to ultimately bring on candidates like AOC and Cori Bush and Jamal Bowman, etc. Rashida Tlaib, like that. So we call the squad now came out of Justice Democrats. It was this idea. And again, while letting people do the research on how that has ended up, you've gotten some great pros and great cons. Like on the one hand, that's built tangible power. You've gotten people into office. On the other hand, there's like Justice Democrats on its own has sort of gone to exist as its own entity. And I don't think it's that connected to the online space and being able to mobilize that. And honestly, for better or worse, I'd like Justice Democrats to be as far away from the left online as possible right now, because it's not great. And I don't want that. I don't think it's a good thing politically to show off, but I think we've done that. And Justice Democrats is also the other point I was going to make, is kind of like the exception to the rule, because not to call out any particular entities any more than I already have, let's say, but there are different movements, and I'm going to stop right there, but there are different groups out there that put together political parties and groups and try to coalition build, but they usually miss out on, they usually overweigh one thing. They weigh on, oh, we're a bunch of YouTubers and podcasters, therefore we have the influence and the cachet to bring about a bunch of crowds all across the country and get them to mobilize on something. It's usually you're missing both sides of it. And I will give credit, like Cenk Uygur, Kyle Kalinske, the other folks, where he'd say he like within Justice Democrats did a really good job of melding the online strategy with the political strategy, but you've really got to do both smartly, and you have to, again, check your ego and not thinking one is too more important than the other in order to turn this space into real political power, I think.
I wanted to kind of sorry, go ahead. I was gonna bring you in, Hilda, because you kind of have your feet in both camps, right? So you're online, but I don't think, like, you're not terminally online. Like, you don't come across as terminally online to me. So it's like, are we overemphasizing like the online left's impact in your opinion, or is it really an issue that does kind of have real world consequences? I'll let you go ahead and
It does have real consequences. After the 26th election, when Bernie lost, it was like a punch in the gut for all of us that were leftists in Canada, because whatever goes on in the United States will domino into Canada. So we were hoping, with the discussion of Medicare for all, we were hoping that finally would happen for the Americans. Because as Canadians, we like to think that we are just a little bit better than the Americans. We like to pat ourselves on the back. We're not. We're a bunch of shitweasels here also. We really are. As long as we are just a little bit better than you, then we can basically turn our nose up and touch birds in the air. But then when Bernie lost in 2020, that was not only just a punch in the gut, but that was like a mixed martial arts kick to the gut. It was horrific. It was horrific. And so we do need people that are charismatic, who are this beacon as a leader. The only reason why Canada got the Medicare for all, or what we call universal health care, is because of Tommy Douglas. He was the leader of the NDP party. He successfully got it passed through the House of Commons. He was not even the prime minister. Lester B. Pearson was the prime minister. And fun fact, Kiefer Sutherland, that Tommy Douglas, that was his grandson there. So, I mean,
okay, interesting.
It was just that there was this beacon of hope where this got passed. And it did have a lot of strife with respect to the doctors. The doctors were all arguing, oh, no, we're going to be bringing in all these people from out of the country. No, it didn't happen. And then when that didn't happen for us with the 2020 election, when Bernie lost, we're thinking, oh, well, maybe with a pandemic, that might kick it into high gear for you guys. And sadly, it hasn't happened for you. So sadly, that's not going to happen for us. And for people that aren't aware of the Canadian healthcare system, it fucking sucks. It's horrific. It's awful. I mean, we can go to the doctor, sure. We can pick any doctor we want to, sure. But our dental is not covered. So if you happen to need filling, well, I guess, that's just not an option for you. If you happen to need glasses, apparently vision is optional in our world over here. If you happen to need prescription drugs, that's not covered either. Mental health isn't covered. Physical therapy, massage therapy, infertility. I don't know about you, but I think people need to be able to populate in order to make the world go around. Home care is not covered. Long-term care is not covered. Again, I could list the number of things that aren't covered. But as Canadians, we like to get on our real high horse here and take a victory lap because we think that we are just a little bit better than you guys. But another thing that was striking was in 2020, there was a poll where 75% of Canadians were very proud of their healthcare. And here is where it gets sideways and wonky donkey, because we feel that it is not as bad as what the Americans have. We have,
if that's your bar.
Exactly. We dug a hole in the ground, lowered the bar, covered it up, and gently walked across it with our, horse that we're riding on. But we do definitely need to have some sort of a beacon, a person. Tommy Douglas was that for us in the 60s. And see, I'm old as fuck. I was born before anyone landed on the moon. I can remember how awful it was. And so this beacon of hope with Bernie, it's not there anymore. We don't have a Nina Turner in Canada. We don't have a Bernie Sanders. We don't have anybody on the left at all. That is this beacon. All the left in Canada is doing is trying to drag us across the center line onto the right. There is no reason why we shouldn't be yanking them over to try and have that discussion with us, which goes back to the original points that I was making in the previous section, where we need to put people in strategically placed positions of power. We really do. And I mean, this isn't controversial. People need to be able to live. It's not a radical idea. And so right now, because Canada is in this, what we call the erection of election mode, meaning we're erecting all of our signs and, getting ready, and people are measuring themselves against who the other candidate is. But unless we have some leader to unite us, then we will not be able to focus and amalgamate and consolidate all of our efforts for the greater good. We just won't.
Yeah, what I'm wondering is, it seems like the consensus so far with everyone who's spoken on this is leadership is really important. I mean, one thing that I always go back to is Occupy, as Dan brought up, and how, without any leader, I mean, sure, it's admirable that it's horizontally organized, but at the end of the day, you do need somebody to kind of be the face of that movement. And so my question to Harvey is, like, do you think that absent of some sort of an actual, like, leftist superstar, can organizations do the trick? Or do we actually need someone to be like the face, the icon for the movement? Like, I don't want to be like putting too much stock into celebrity worship, but it really felt like having Bernie, like this idea of him being president, really united a lot of people. And so I just don't know, like, that we're going to get that again, at least in the near future. So is there anything else, like a lower standard that we can try to hit to, like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm just,
well,
is there anything else?
It is fascinating to consider the fact that between Bernie, who turned 80 today, I think it is. Yes, today.
Right. Happy birthday, Bernie.
Okay. And the squad. Who's the oldest member of the squad?
Probably Talib.
How old is she? Not to be prying into her personal life, but
mid-40s.
Yeah.
I mean, think about
mid-early 40s.
Think about the gap there. Okay. I don't know how old Ro Khanna is, but you think about it, in the Democratic Party, at least, there's this amazing sort of age gap between the most prominent left figure in America and the rising stars. Now, the fact that we're on the verge of dystopia becoming apocalypse, leaving that aside for the moment, the prospects for the left are great. If you think about young people, you think about your generation, I mean, the prospects are great. So the question of leadership is crucial. Okay. For what it's worth, I should have said this at the outset. My campaign, my crusade for some years now, maybe not as many as I think, has been to try to get younger and older politicians in America to start talking about something like an economic bill of rights that FDR proposed, that Bernie tried to resurrect a bit, but didn't do it enough. And it's, I can tell you, and you haven't heard a lot about it, but here in Wisconsin, it's definitely becoming a possible cause. It may well become that in California in the next couple of years. So, I mean, there are things underway. Now, in terms of leadership, I mean, I've already made clear that I don't think the left can ever redeem itself without the labor movement redeeming itself. I'm quite serious about that. But I also think that if we're going to think in terms of personalities, and I don't mean personalities in the sense of the best face for the movement, but the energy that would be involved, I think Sarah Nelson of the airline flight attendants literally could be the next major figure on the left, not as an electoral, not for the electoral voice, but as a working person's left figure. And the only question is whether or not the labor movement will allow her to prevail, as opposed to splitting into their respective, trade unionism versus industrial unionism versus service unionism. I mean, but she's incredible, absolutely incredible. And there are other folks around the labor movement like that. Now, again, in politics, you can see this younger generation emerging, but there's that real, I mean, who's there in their 50s, say, because that's kind of a prime moment to emerge as a major political figure. I don't know. Oh, by the way, can I just go back and make one comment? We were talking before, and whoever said it, I don't know if it was Hector or Jake or whomever, and I was thinking, yeah, so Bernie was this angry old guy, and AOC was this sort of, talk about uplifting kind of figure. Okay. I mean, and I'll never forget, I thought, Chief, it's a shame that you've these two edges, but Bernie served an incredible purpose, again, for all of what I think are his failings. And AOC, it's become this thing where even people on the left find it imperative to pick on her. I mean, you know, I use the F word, the F bomb before. I don't know if we're supposed to be doing that.
You totally can.
Okay, what the fuck is wrong with people? Okay, this is the most promising figure imaginable on the left. And I'll give you one example. So after she was elected, she arrived in DC, and they did a number of interviews with her on all the major networks. And she said something really interesting, and I thought this could really make a difference. She talked about Lincoln and Roosevelt as really progressive, radical figures in American politics. We can fault them. We can definitely fault them. We can take anyone apart, by the way. That's something else. The left has got to start taking apart heroes. Got to stop taking apart heroes. Okay? That is like ridiculous. And what happened? My own peers, a couple of left historians, criticized her for making too much of Lincoln and FDR, and talk about fucked. I thought, what the fuck is this about? And it made the New York Times. It made the New York
really?
Times. Yeah, you know, so we've got to stop going after heroes. There are no saints. That's all. There are no saints. Got to get over that, okay? I can't remember. The only time I've ever voted and not held my nose is when I voted for Bernie, but I still vote. Okay?
Yeah. I want to ask this question to Riverboat Jack, because I've been trying to be introspective after 2020, and like I notice even myself, like kind of to what Professor Harvey was talking about, I even notice myself like nitpicking politicians who I like, where it's like they'll say something and it's not even necessarily that meaningful, but I'll just, in my mind, it'll like trigger me, and like my lizard brain will start like going all crazy, and like the red alerts will be going off. So I mean, like, do you think that the left does have this issue of really tearing each other down? Not necessarily like just leaders and like heroes, if you want to use that word, but like just each other as well. Like I think that that's part of the issue. It's like we really tear each other down. And even if we weren't political, if the left was like some other amorphous organization around some other thing, that would still be super toxic. So do you think that overall this is a widespread issue of us just like ripping each other to shreds?
I think that it's a couple of different things, right? Like I think it comes from the fact that a lot of people in the online left are extremely online, and
right.
A lot of us are, you know, we're trying to claw for clout, you know, essentially, because it's like it is our job. Like this is our little fiefdom that we're building up, right? And a lot of us don't necessarily have like this unifying overarching goal, right? Like we agree on a few things, right? Like Medicare for all, but if like it doesn't look like we're getting traction on that, well, then the next best thing for your clout is, well, I have a controversial take on Abraham Lincoln, the most beloved American president, and that will get me a lot of internet clout, right? Like, but there's nothing that's going to further a leftist mission in attacking Abraham Lincoln, right? Like really that is an ego building exercise. It is a online clout building exercise. It's not something that's going to win you political support. And if we're talking about actually making a difference, then yeah, we need to actually have this focus on our rhetoric and focus on our subjects and focus on these larger issues that we agree on, right? Like we shouldn't be getting bogged down in the weeds. We should be talking about, you know, labor, organize, how to organize a union, how to, if you wanted to organize a democratic workplace, how to go out and make a difference and further the cause of Medicare for all. We need to talk about these things in a way that actually furthers our goals rather than just our own personal ego, essentially.
Yeah.
And I think that that's something that is lacking.
Yeah, I think that, for all these issues that we're bringing up, it kind of centers on like the terminally online. And even though that is a detriment, like being online has a lot of negative side effects, it also should, in theory, really embolden the left. I mean, we have someone on from Canada, Hildebeest. We have Pix from Australia. So why isn't there this opportunity for like an international leftist solidarity movement? And I really feel like Michael Brooks was trying to like forced us all in that direction, but something just, people, I don't know what it is. Pix, do you want to weigh in as someone from a different country, like seeing the shit show play out here, and then you also kind of have your own shit show? Like, what is it about the left that's just like incapable currently of coming together and doing anything? I mean, we have the easiest issue, in my opinion, to rally around currently is climate change, because it affects all of us on the planet. So I feel like that's not this one insular thing. Like, it's not, oh, well, there's this community that doesn't have housing, or there's this country without Medicare for all. Like, this is the one thing that should, in theory, facilitate this building of an international left, but it hasn't happened. So, like, what's your take on that? I mean, it's hard to psychoanalyze everyone on the left, but
Well, I agree. I think there's a few things that come into play. I think what we're really struggling with at the moment, not only online but globally, is our overall conceptualization of leadership. So basically, our conceptualization of leadership still looks like a cis, white, strong male figure, right? And so on the left, where generally we like to be very inclusive of, lots of different oppressed groups who are fighting for their own, dear cause, right? We are in a place where we need the support of white men, basically, to lift up marginalized voices and to make sure that the left, as a wider spectrum of people, are also lifting up marginalized voices, Indigenous voices, queer voices, all of those things. And so what I think ends up happening, especially online, is that we see, if you look at the online political space, which is where I am, and you see the leaders in the space who are generally white, cis males still, right? I think what ends up happening, because of the kind of commodification of identity, these leaders, instead of focusing on bringing up the entire movement as a whole, look for points of difference so that they can specialize their brand of leftist leadership over all of the other kinds of brands of leftist leadership, which ends up in Twitter fights, hate videos, all of the things that you just see and you're like, why? So there's so many things that are happening, but I think what we really need to focus on as a cohesive movement, because we have major opportunities right now with our access to information, the internet. Look at us all having a conversation right now. It is easier to disperse the movement over a wide range of things. And I think it's about inclusive language. I never used to engage. I have been talking about politics for a couple of years now, but I never used to engage in the panel space because I was like, I am going to get eaten alive. This is a terrible idea. Like, but then my thinking kind of changed when I started to look at things from a more like intersectional perspective, because if you don't see the space, right, both online and IRL, as it exists right now, any of the fixes that you're putting in place, any of the leaders that you are putting in place aren't going to be what's needed. Like, if you don't see the space as it exists, you can't put the right leader in the right position. And I think because we look at there's something really comforting about kind of grouping down, right, into factions, which is what happens on the left, because you see people who are really comfortable in a queer community, you see people who are really comfortable in a Black community, an Indigenous community, and the thing is, we really do have to work on like bringing all of those communities together while at the same time lifting up the voices of the most marginalized. Anyway,
Yeah, that's really
TLDR, we need a new conceptualization of leadership, which is inclusive of diverse voices.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Part of it too, I think, is a lot of us, since Zoomers possibly might be more affected by this. Growing up with social media and the internet, it's kind of easy to be introverted, even if you're not. Like, it's just the easiest thing to post videos by yourself and not engage with these panels. I mean, doing these panels was something that I kind of forced myself to do after many years, because it takes time, it takes work, and some people have social anxiety, so you might not necessarily want to put people in this position where they have to speak in front of a group of people and talk about complex things. So it's there's a lot of things to consider. But in terms of leadership, the conceptualization of leadership is really important, organizational, individual, but also something that Spencer touched on earlier was like a media leader, since, the left doesn't have that. And my question to Spencer is, is there hope? I mean, we've kind of touched on the egos on the left, especially of like indie media personalities, right? We're always butting heads and doing attack videos on each other. Like, is there hope of like some sort of unified or larger, like, cohesive apparatus on the left that could in some ways start to facilitate like leadership or be a leader in and of itself? Like, what's your take on this? Because you study a lot of mainstream media, and I think that the issues that plague independent media are different from the issues that plague mainstream media, but there still are issues nonetheless. So what's your like overall prediction on like where the indie media movement is going to be like 5-10 years from now? Like, will it continue to factionalize, or do you think there might be some sort of unity in the future?
Chris Hedges said he's not a Marxist because although he agrees with Marx's writing, he disagrees with the idea of having hope. I don't necessarily have, hope for the future. I think, talking about leaders popping up, it's the luck of the draw, right? And they very rarely get elected. Maybe sometimes on the local level. I mean, like I said, in New York, we have socialists in Albany. Realistically, Bernie was never going to get in because the mainstream Democratic Party was never going to let that happen. As far as media, I mean, the thing with corporate media is that it's lubricated by money and advertising. I mean, that is the glue that holds it all together. There is no necessary connection between individual indie media outlets. So everyone can be factionalized and atomized, and it doesn't necessarily matter to anyone's bottom line, so it's never going to stop. I don't have hope. I mean,
yeah.
You fight because you have to, and you do what you can in movements or mutual aid or direct action. You show up to protest to, as much as you can. You talk about the things you want to talk about because, hopefully it's helpful. At the very least, it's cathartic. I mean, a lot of the topics of my videos are just things that I saw on TV and I felt annoyed about enough to do a video on. But
yeah. Well, and some of the things like with mainstream media is there's these certain incentives, right? Like the advertising dollars, the ratings, which leads to a sensationalist bias. But on the left, I think that we should be more open about the incentives here. And the incentives, it's been really obvious that like clickbait and attacking people is very, very it makes you successful, right? Like if I do a video where I talk about climate change, nobody's going to click on that. Nobody cares about it. But if I change that video to where Dave Rubin said this dumb thing about climate change, people are going to click on that. So it's tough. And Dan, like knowing that this is the case, knowing that nobody's perfect, knowing that a bunch of people will log on and they don't care about anything but success. Like, how do we deal with that? Like, I'm trying to teach my viewers like media literacy in some ways, to like know what to look out for, how to differentiate the grifters from the non-grifters, but it's really tough. And you can see how easily people can get duped by like charlatans online. So that's part of the reason why I think that the left is so dysfunctional. Did you want to add anything to that? Because I feel like, a lot of the divisiveness, it really is bad faith, in my opinion. Like, I think that disagreements with the left, who has high standards, I think that's to be expected. But like, some of this is unnecessary if people realize that some actors on the left, like Jimmy Dore and other folks, are just like, they don't care about anything but views and clicks.
Yeah, it's hard because this was one of the hardest things I had to reconcile with as a producer at TYT, which is, I guess, something that I think we all know as content creators, but that, yeah, as you were alluding to, climate change, we can all agree that hands down, like, face value is like the most, if not one of the most important issues facing us. It's like a dire issue. You make a video about it, it's going to be your worst performing video. And if you have a business to run, or if you are trying to monetize your channel because you need to survive, then it's weird. But like, you have to make that decision of like, either I cover that video and take the monetary hit, and at TYT at least you have the privilege of being at the scale where we could do that from time to time, and that didn't matter as much, or you decide to do the video with a spin that you know that'll help it get more views. Another thing is like putting, if it's a Trump video and if it's Trump talking about climate change, then it'll do well. But so, and I would often talk with friends and have like really like long drunken discussions at night about like, why are you making all this content? And I would kind of go, why are you consuming all of this content? I would very much love to like, and I would say that jokingly, not of course like blaming the audience, but like, I would love for the platform to incentivize me to make other things. I want to, like, in an ideal world, we would all love to make the exact things we want to make, regardless of whether or not the platform prefers it, but whether or not it fulfills us, whether or not it feels like it is providing our audience with valuable and important information that we feel like leads them to whatever action we want them to have. And we can pay our rent. Like, we want to be able to do all those things, but that isn't our decision. It's the algorithms and kind of people's behavior and choices. And so I wrestle with this all the time. My next video is a climate change video, but it's the same issue where I've had to abstract the idea of climate change so far away from what the video is about that when it finally drops, you're probably not going to realize it's a climate change video until 6 minutes in. And that's kind of the trick, is I'm using like a flashier topic to try to appeal to an audience that doesn't usually think about politics. But like, to give a little bit of the game away, there's different communities on YouTube. There's video game YouTube, there's tech YouTube, there's car YouTube. And so by using one of those silos, I can get people who are usually not thinking about politics and maybe kind of Trojan horse them into a political conversation, political dialogue, something that they won't know, or maybe like they won't figure out from the first part of the video that I'm a like leftist political YouTuber. But by the end of it, they'll come out asking the questions that might lead them to left YouTube on other topics, or, so I'm trying to, almost as a creative exercise for myself, because I think y'all can also relate to it. Making Doom content forever can be like tiring for your own soul.
Yes.
And so like, I want to do like a different creative exercise, but also, I have to wrestle with, I want to make sometimes boring topics, but topics I think are vitally important, go as viral as I possibly can. And that's a challenge that you have to weigh with the fickle nature of how people are. But as content creators, like, that's the challenge that we have to figure out. Like, that one's on us to figure out.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that if we as content creators get better, myself included, of course, then I feel like the left overall, at least the online left, might be a little bit more, I guess stable is the right word. I don't know. It's tough, right? Because we are a relatively new movement. I mean, Harvey talks about, history all the time, but for us, this feels new because we all kind of jumped in 2016, others in 2020. Our political awakening coincided with Bernie Sanders becoming president for a lot of young people. So it feels new to them, and they're kind of finding their footing, and there's going to be growing pains. But I feel like it's all part of the process. And the fact that we're having conversations about our flaws as a movement is really healthy, especially like as content creators, right? Because if you're a content creator, like you really benefit from creating this cult of personality where you're like, I was right about this, this, and this, and I'm never wrong. I'm awesome. But like to actually kind of like expose the human side of ourselves is just like people who talk on the internet. I think that there is value in that, even if it's not necessarily conducive to monetary benefit, as we were kind of talking about. So I mean, we kind of like it's hard to come away with any like concise message about the left, but I think that it is really clear that some sort of leadership has to emerge if the left is going to be successful. So I'll kind of just open this up to anyone else who has any closing thoughts on this, about the left, whether or not we can ever be successful without leadership, or if you just had anything that you wanted to add in before we go to our closing shout outs.
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the most promising candidates is probably going to be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I know she's real young, but in 2024, I mean, there aren't really that many other progressive options that could feasibly do it. I think even if we're looking at like Rashida Tlaib, I don't think Rashida Tlaib has the same amount of like social cachet that AOC does. AOC knows how to navigate platforms like Instagram, Twitter, even Twitch. That is something that she can leverage to great effect and has in the past. And I think that if I recall correctly, there was a poll that came out during the 2020 election that showed like 3/4 of Democrats would happily vote for AOC. Wow. And that's before she was even legally eligible to run for president. So I think that she has the makings, even if it's not in 2024. I hope it is, because I'm not too thrilled by the other prospects. But I think that there is a lot of the ingredients and makings there of a really powerful leader for the left that could go forward. And I hope so. I do think that while we could talk about a leaderless sort of movement that would be great, I think that having a leader for a movement definitely helps in our current kind of duopoly between Republican and Democrat. Just the way our system is set up, having a leader is really helpful.
Yeah.
Do we worry
Does anyone
about
have any
her...
hopium?
I do.
Sorry, go ahead, Jake.
I have tons of hopium, but in fact, quite literally, I do not allow people to doomer in my chat. But I was going to ask a question. Someone brought it up in chat, and I thought that's actually kind of interesting, just because of the way American politics works. This is kind of a weird question. Like, do we want Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez to be like her political usage? You can't like go back into Congress after that, right? Like, is that good to use to be like, this person's really, really young, and then try to have her be president, and hopefully she can be, but imagine she wins. She's no longer in a career politician as a very strong progressive voice for 50 years. She's there for 8. Is that reasonable or weird? Or that was just a question I never thought of until now.
I think that makes her more valuable to the left.
Yeah,
like
that was my inclination too, but it was an interesting question.
A young former president who can go out and stump and campaign.
Yeah.
Wait a minute. I think I heard about this guy. His name was Barack Obama. That didn't work.
True.
Well,
no, I think
Nobody knows about him
Obama was
anymore.
largely defeated by Obama in that regard.
Yeah. Pix, did you want to jump in with some hopium?
I have some hopium, and it's not that I disagree with Spencer in regards to having hope for fast systemic change or anything like that, but leftist politics at the moment are based on hope. In order to motivate people, there has to be a sense of hope. Otherwise, it's too hard. Right? That you have the right peddling fear-based rhetoric, and it is very convincing, right? So generally what I try and tell people, and where I try and help people kind of focus in, is not on the fact that things are going to change quickly, right? Sometimes these things are so slow, and there are people out there that are hurting. They are suffering, and it is just so frustrating to see nothing changing. And it's like, I need this to happen now. Why isn't it happening now? And you can see how they become extremely apathetic to hope-based politics when everything that the future holds right now, when you look at all the issues, you're like, well, this is a lot. But I think if you can focus on the idea that no matter where we go, no matter the climate crisis, no matter all of the things that happen over the next 20, 50, 100 years, there are always going to be people fighting for good. There are always going to be people out there in their communities trying to do the right thing for other people. And like,
Yeah.
I think that is a human strength. And I think it is a strength of the left that we should really focus on, that we actually care about one another, and we can take that going forward into anything.
Yeah, I've been around the block I've been a political junkie for about 50 plus years. And I see the waves and the cycles that come through, and I echo absolutely with what Pixel says. It's the incredible highs come with incredible lows, but then the hope that and the learning that comes from all of that is what pushes us and drives us to be better, to do better, and to reach out to others to say, hey, it's going to be okay. We'll catch it next time. And sometimes we do catch it next time. Sometimes we don't. Right now, we really want to catch some good luck because we could really, really use some. And I know that in my chat, it can get quite doomer, which is why I have a Doctor Who wine fridge in behind me. I got to have that because there are days where it's so doomerish, but we always have hope. We always do.
Yeah.
Is that an infinite wine fridge, by the way?
It holds 3 bottles of wine.
No, it's Doctor Who, so I want
The one thing I'd add on to that is that failure isn't ever complete, right? Like every failure is a chance for us to learn way more than we ever would have if we had won. And so if you run for office, if you get a group of people to help you try and get into office and you fail, guess what? You just learned a whole lot. And that makes you valuable. You know, whether you're an individual actor or whether it's Bernie Sanders and his campaign, a lot of talented people learned a whole lot about politics and are using those skills, carrying them forward to make either local, state, national fights that much more likely to succeed. So even when we fail, don't let that cause you to crash and burn. Okay.
Yeah. I think people forget
it's part of the process.
You don't have to use the hammer from the Hammer and Sickle just to smash stuff. You can build things with it too. I think people it's very, very easy to be like, that's too hard. It's so easy to do that. And it's not as easy to be like, and here's how we fix it. And I think for me, in my community, I feel like it's my responsibility to not let that attitude happen, because we lead to complacency so quickly, just as a society, especially Americans in general. When things are difficult, like we like to think we're like these blue collar, hardworking people. No, we're whining a lot of the time. We have a very, very comfortable living situation, but we're to that point of living situations where it's like, well, here's all the other stuff that we've never been able to address. And this is why we're so upset about it, is because like now you're talking about like, okay, we're not just surviving, we are quality of life is the question now. And having to discuss quality of life issues, like, housing and food and healthcare and abortion and any of those sorts of things, those are the really, really divisive things. And that's why I think we need to focus on wherever our lane is, focus on these things, then try really hard to do stuff like this where, we have people with diverse background. Like I've never run for Congress. I don't know anything about that shit. I'd probably be not very good at it, but like, Hector has done things like this. Harvey has been out here teaching people for years and years about tons of great stuff. So like we need to have everybody sort of, again, we need to collectivize. We sort of sit on our little islands and don't interact a lot. And I think that's probably to our detriment, even though we make more money when we're alone. I certainly make more money when I'm alone. But like, I'm in a situation where my bills are probably gonna be paid. I'm fine with that. So let's try to like spread out and maybe not do things with capital gain in mind. And I know a lot of us don't, but I think we know some people, some peers among us that maybe do that. So, yeah, I don't know. I really appreciate this kind of stuff. So I think it's been great.
Yeah,
that's
same.
my hopium.
Hey, if we can end on hopium, then that gives me the fuel to like go on for the next month. It'll run out and the doomerism will set back in, but it's enough to kind of propel me forward for a little while. We just lost one of the panelists, but before we go, Spencer. So hopefully he'll come back, but I want to give each and every single one of you the chance to kind of give yourselves shout outs, let the people know what you're doing, where you do it, how we can support you. If you have a Patreon, please plug that as well. First of all, thank you all so much. Like, you all contribute such like incredible perspectives here. The only thing that sucks about doing big panels is that not everyone has the opportunity to speak, and I would love to like pick your brains individually for hours, but unfortunately that's not the case. So eventually we'll all touch bases again, but it's just been so incredible. So what we'll do is we'll start with Riverboat Jack. Please tell the people where we can find you and how we can support your show.
You can find me over at twitch.tv/riverboatjack, where I talk about socialism, decommodification, collective action, all that good stuff. And you can support my work by just tuning in, having a listen, sharing your thoughts, and consider dropping me a follow while you're there.
Yeah, well, thank you so much. Hector, how can we find you and follow all of your activism and follow you pissing off people in your community who are corrupt?
So anyone who's into progressive politics and, like Mike said, generally overthrowing the Democratic establishment, specifically in North New Jersey, you can give me a follow. I'm at Oseguera2020. That's my last name, 2020, on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. And yeah, it's been a fun ride. We're currently suing the county executive, trying to abolish ICE, and we'll be fighting for that until it happens. So I hope you all join me for that ride, and I know I'll speak to Micah at some time soon. So thanks so much for having me.
Absolutely. And Dan from the internet.
Dan from the internet. That is what it is. YouTube.com/Dan from the internet. I do power reports semi-monthly, every 2 weeks. Just a big ass political show that hopefully of things matter. Hopefully you check it out, as well as all the other wonderful shows that folks have on here that I'll definitely be watching and consuming. And follow me on Twitter at Dan from the web, where I'll occasionally shit post and things like that. But yeah, thanks for having me on. I've enjoyed seeing clips of the Humanist Report for quite a while now, so it's cool to like make the worlds connect again.
Hey, right on. All right, Pixel Smixel.
Hi. Thank you so much, firstly, for running such an amazing discourse. I feel like this was super interesting and super productive from everyone, and I just think that's something really unique and special. But I'm Pixel Smixel everywhere. I cover the news in the middle of the night, American time. So if you find yourself up too late, you might see me live over on Twitch. I have a pretty decent newsreader voice. Like, I know I'm a little bit more high-pitched here than I would be usually, but yep, that's a little bit of a shtick of mine. We have really interesting conversations. I do a lot of general education as well, because I think it's really important for kind of a perspective on political things that are happening all over the world. And I think the more perspective we have in our politics, the better and more intersectional they can be. But yeah, thank you for having me on, and you can follow my Twitter too. You could follow my Instagram. You could follow me everywhere if you wanted, but like you don't have to. But you could, but you don't have to.
Absolutely. Actually, you're required to. I will be banning anyone who doesn't follow all of the social media accounts. Mods, just make a note of that. Okay, the next person is the great Hildebeest. Hildebeest, where can the people find you?
Hi, everybody can find me on twitch.tv/Hilda_Beast, just spelt exactly how it is below. I am also on Twitter, same name, and I'm also on YouTube, same name. And I stream mainly politics, Canadian politics. I also stream horror games, and I stream cake decorating, great big massive 2-meter cakes. And yeah, I'm a leftist, and I love what I do. I've been around for a long time, and I look forward to chit-chatting with everybody. I run a pretty safe pretty safe community where people are free to present their ideas. I don't tolerate I don't tolerate shit weasels. I just don't. There's a door. They can fuck off. They can go. But for the most part, we always have a good time. And if not, there's wine. There's always wine.
Hey, do I have permission to use Shitweasel if I credit you?
Oh yeah, I have shit weasel emotes. Yeah.
Oh my God. Okay, yeah.
Weasel too, because there's not enough drinking apparently. Only Pixel and I have basically got the drinking emotes. Yeah.
That's great. That's great. Okay, real quick. So we got a message from Spencer. His computer froze. So let me do his shout out for him. So Spencer does basically media critiques. He uses the manufacturing consent propaganda model from Chomsky. He is writing an article for Fair. Really, really great, well-researched, great presentations. He was actually just the featured content creator a couple of weeks ago here. So please check out Spencer Snyder. Once the links come, here we go. You can find all these links right here. They'll also be in the description box. Please feel free to support him on Patreon. Really great up and comer, and I'm super excited to see where he goes and what he does with his platform. Okay, Professor Harvey J.K. I said I wasn't going to call you Professor, but I can't not.
Yeah, I noticed you couldn't give that up, which is okay. I mean, it's very sweet. But, I'm not a content creator, but in the same way as the rest of you, people can go online and just look up Harvey J.K. The books are all out there. They want to see my arguments of a contemporary sort. If they go to Jacobin, Harvey J.K. If they go to the Nomiki Kant show, Harvey J.K. The David Feldman show, Harvey J.K. The Jeff Santos radio show. It's all out there. Okay, but I will say that I have a forthcoming video. I do stuff with the Gravel people, Gravel Institute.
Oh,
so
right on.
Coming out imminently on FDR's Economic Bill of Rights. And I think in late October, I'm going to New York. I'll do one with them on Thomas Paine, my lifelong hero, who I've written about more than anyone. So there you go.
Hey, that's awesome. And
having said all that, I do want to say, Mike, it's great to see you. Thank you for having me in this decidedly enjoyable event. Okay. You're all very impressive. And so my hopium for the night is you guys.
Oh, well, that's so sweet. Folks, if you haven't already, check out Professor K's books. I've read, I believe, 3 of them. And every single time I read these books, I feel like so refreshed. Like it's just having like your feet in history. Like it really is important. Like it gives you so much direction. In fact, I probably need to reread some of your books because my brain has been rotting from being online too much. But that's a different story for a different day.
I'll just note, and I didn't say it, but people should look up our conversations on Humanist Report.
Right. We've done a couple of them. So yeah, always really great.
I think we've done 3.
I want to say 3. I usually will bring you on. Yeah, 1 for each book. Yeah. I bring you on when I feel like I need hopium and I kind of lose like my sense of direction and I feel like my brain is truly rotting and you kind of like recenter me. So I appreciate the work you do. Folks, this is like you're our unofficial producer for the Humanist Report. All right, folks. And last but certainly not least, the great actual Jake.
They're great. I have not written a single book, but I do like a book from now and then. But I sometimes am extorted by my chat to wear corn suits. So that works out sometimes. But yeah, we do a lot of leftist content. We critique lots of things. Recently, we've been doing a lot of sex ed because America fails at that. So we've been doing a lot of that. Hey, consent, just that's the whole thing. And then you're good. We do, so much mutual aid. We have lots of talks with a lot of people. I've been around for a long time. And I don't know, it's really cool to be able to talk to people that I don't have to yell at half of on one of these panels on the internet. That's awesome. That's so refreshing. Usually there's at least one dum-dum. It's just like this the whole time and they're yelling. But this is super nice. I'd love to do it again. Absolutely wonderful. Oh, and absolutely. I guess actual Jake on Twitch. I forgot to plug I'm really bad at doing that. I always forget. Actual Jake.
Well,
That's
hey,
my thing.
we
There you go.
will remind the people, Actual Jake on Twitch,
There
if
you
you
go.
want to see the corn costume. And the great corn memes, by the way, the one that I really like is the like demon corn, where they're like the horns are corn. Like whoever the
Yeah.
artist was that designed
Yeah.
that, they get an
Yeah.
A+. That was phenomenal.
Super good. I have a lot of you know what's actually wild, really talented artists send me all sorts of silly corn things, and these are also silly corn things, but they're amazing. These are like felt like little emotes from my channel that I can actually have. There's a more lewd one that I won't show everybody, but if you'd like to see it, you can come on by. But yeah, it's a cool community. It's a weird thing I ended up doing on accident, but it's a lot of fun. It's a really positive place. If you need hopium, trust me, these people will put it in you, whether you want it or not. No consent needed for hopium here. You will get it. All you got to do is click on this, and you'll be like, "Wow, I feel way better than I did 5 minutes ago." They are very nice people. I'm very fortunate to have my community.
Well, that's wonderful, because like over here, this is all like dystopian humor, depression. We literally have a segment on this program where we just look at dog and cat pictures to kind of like forget about the looming apocalypse.
We actually do aftercare at the end of my streams. We do what's called we do what's called a cleanse, and we'll just look at something interesting or cute or fun. And we have favorites. We've watched marble racing for a whole summer. It was so which is ridiculously entertaining, for the record. You should all check out marble racing. They're marbles that race. What's to not like? So
I didn't know that was a thing, but now
you just put them down and they do marble stuff. It's super fun.
Maybe I'll do like domino videos. What I usually do, besides
nice.
Dystopian Times, on my Twitch streams, I'll have my dog cam up. And on the last stream, we talked about a lot of like really, really awful, like ICU doctors sharing their experience with Delta. So I had my dog, he was on camera, and he had the 3 starter Pokemon stuffed animals. I mean, I feel like there's no better therapy than that, right? Like,
yeah, dogs and cats. I bring my pets on too. We try very hard to maintain some form of like serotonin. Like, and if you need to provide yourself with some chemical stimulation to get through the moment, it's legal in some places. Michigan is one of them. You can always imbibe if you'd like to. But yeah, it's a cool thing. This right here is like a pretty positive thing, even though it's dystopia and we did some doom.
Yes,
I think everyone here, especially the perspectives from people like Hector and Harvey, who have never really consumed any of your stuff. Well, actually, Harvey, I think your Thomas Paine book was actually given to me by my history professor at one point, and I'm not sure I read it. I'm going to be totally honest, but I might buy it now because it looks familiar. So
that was my love letter to America. You should read it.
I think I might. I'll just press the buy now button. There we go. We did it.
There you go. You made one book sale, Harvey,
we did
from
it.
The show.
Successful.
I
can't. My editor and I used to say one purchase at a time.
Well, I can't be a self-professed history nerd and talk to Harvey and then not buy or at least read one of the books. So that'd be silly.
Yeah, I'll be collecting my royalties, Harvey, for that sale. By the way, send the invoice a week from now. No, but seriously, folks, this has been so much fun. Thank you all so much. I know that people are kind of like sad that the show is ending. This is only the season finale. I will bring it back eventually, but I'm going to be pivoting to doing interviews with candidates. Probably mid-October is when I'll start. But for now, it's going to take a little bit of a break. Maybe we'll do a Christmas episode, bring some of your favorites back, bring on some people who I didn't get to bring on, which there were dozens. But yeah, folks, this has been absolutely phenomenal. I will come right back to read super chats. But folks, thank you once again to all of the panelists. This has been really great. I appreciate it, folks.
Is there a play? Funny, I've had the whole picture with all of us on. Was there a stream of chats that I could have been seeing?
There is a chat on the side. I don't know if you guys can see it from your end, but on my end, I could see it and I can pull them in and highlight them.
Okay, I got it.
Yeah,
okay.
we can see.
Right.
Yeah, it's I try to like be selective because if it's like some bad comment, which I didn't see any this time, if there's a bad comment, I don't want to accidentally click that. And then it's like, oh, that's like fucking up the mood here. We're trying to like set a vibe. So I try to be selective, but yeah. I believe that you can, like, as you watch this on YouTube, you can see the comments scroll I think, anyways. Sometimes it loads, sometimes it doesn't work. But yeah, if you want to see like the real time feedback and whatnot.
There's no button down below that I've seen. It says chat.
You can see on our end,
No.
there's like a comments page, like a tab, and it's pulling from YouTube slower, but you
Oh,
can see it.
Yeah.
I'll know next time.
Oh,
Okay,
wait,
okay. I wasn't
still
sure
don't
if you all
see
could see that.
That's funny. I'm in full
I
screen.
don't-
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, you have
I
to get out
haven't
of
been
full
on the other
screen.
end
It'll
of
be
it.
to the
Oh,
right.
is that it?
Yeah, you gotta get out full screen. Then on the right side, it's got that little
Ah,
comment
silly
section.
me. I just wanted to see all of you big screen.
Yeah. Highest possible definition is preferable for seeing all
Absolutely.
these beautiful faces.
They
Thanks
see
so
us. They
much,
see
Mike.
us. Well, thank you all so much.
Yeah.
This has been fantastic. I really appreciate it, folks. This has been Dystopian Times. My name is Mike Figueredo. I will see you all on season 2, or maybe with a new host. I don't know. We'll be back. I'll see you all later.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Well, folks, that's it. That's the show. Hopefully you all enjoyed Dystopian Times. Maybe I will look into doing a Christmas special. I think that would be pretty cool, right? Although I don't want to commit to that and then like not do it. But yeah, folks, let me take some time. X'd out. Thank you so much. You're so kind. Let's see, it shifted. There we go. Thank you so much, X'd out. I really appreciate it. Love you too. So let me get to any of these super chats that I missed. I did put them up on the screen. I don't think I got all of them though. So we have $5 from Blake Mooney, who says, I implore my fellow progressives to go vegan. The leading cause of climate change, deforestation, drought, and ocean dead zones is animal agriculture. Yeah, actually, you will be semi-proud of me. I don't really eat that much meat to begin with. Like, I'm not vegan, but I rarely eat meat. I mean, I have chicken from time to time, so I'm definitely trying to eat less meat because the plant-based alternatives are usually better than the meat versions. And also, I am aware of like, the looming climate apocalypse. So if I can do anything to make a small, insignificant impact, then I want to do that for sure. Vinny Holiday with a $10 super chat says, we need unification now even more because you have way more aggressive rhetoric fractioning. I think you meant factioning. Oh my God. Factioning. I'm so sorry. Different groups. Think about the effects of Jimmy Dore, Joe Rogan, and Candace Owens on average listeners. Yeah, I mean, I try to do something different, right? Like I want to provide the antidote to all of those people who I think are just, they make people angry. They make them overly aggressive when I want people to, I want them to use their brains. I want them to think. I want them to make a positive contribution to this movement. And that's what I try to do. I don't always, nail it, but I certainly try. And I hope that people can see that effort being made on my part. Alicia with a $5 super chat. I'm disappointed but not surprised that the topic has not mentioned once reparations first. # cut the check. This is what we should all get behind. Yeah, I absolutely. I feel that sentiment right there. Reparations in leftist circles absolutely does not get discussed enough. And I think that your frustration is absolutely warranted. So I do apologize for not bringing that up. I think that I've tried to get better at talking about a wide array of subjects, but we all kind of have like our pet projects. Mine has been Medicare for All. It's shifted to climate change. But I think that what I want to do if I do like a Dystopian Times is bring on people who have like these main issues as their like go-to, like Tim Black, Michael Graham. They both talk a lot about reparations, and I would love to bring them on. I actually did have a show with Michael Graham where he kind of gave the ADOS 101 rundown, and it was really, really insightful. So if we bring on people where like women's rights, LGBTQ plus rights, reparations is their go-to, I think that's a way to kind of like broaden the panel. But, there's a lot of things to consider when I'm constructing these panels. Like I want not just ideological diversity on the left, but I also want to make sure that we have a descriptive representation too. I want like a good balance of women, a good balance of men. I want LGBTQ plus people. Sometimes it's difficult, right? To do that and get everyone to, agree to come on. But I try. But yeah, to your point, thank you for bringing that up. I do think that we need to do better at talking about the issues of marginalized communities and be better allies. So we got a new super chat from Captain Polywog Vanderbeef, $10 super chat. Thank you so much. How bad do you think we will let climate change get before we have meaningful action? Thanks, Mike. That's a hard question. I would imagine it's going to be pretty bad. I think that honestly, in some ways, like if there was going to be some breaking point, it would have already happened. So I'm not necessarily sure. Regardless of how bad climate change gets, there's going to be pockets in the world where they're seemingly unaffected by it. I mean, everyone is affected by it, but some people are kind of just like, they're sheltered, right? They live in these wealthier communities and they don't have to think about it as much. I think that maybe not necessarily that it's going to get bad and that's going to be the catalyst of change, but there's going to be a power change in Congress. More younger people who actually care about this issue will come to power. And I think that's ultimately going to be the shift. Because currently it's just not like, it's not working. Let's see. Alex Kawa, good night, Mike. Thank you again for such good series. Thank you so much, Alex. Really appreciate it. Let's see. Tyler Cross with a $5 super chat. This panel canceled out This panel canceled out my doomerism for today. That's good to hear. I hope the hopium dose is enough to keep me going. Love the content, Mike. So glad to hear that. If I'm canceling out your doomerism with these panels, that's really good to hear. Blake Mooney with a $5 super chat. Oh, you sent two. Oh, well, thank you, Blake Mooney. The leading cause of climate change is deforestation, dead zones, species extinction, and drought. Is animal agriculture. #go vegan. Thank you. Thank you so much for the second super chat. Planet Tierra with a $2 super sticker. Appreciate that. 99 Nation Videos with a $5 super chat. We should vote for anyone unafraid to call a fascist and who categorically calls to stop it. They've taken too much and we're facing extinction. I absolutely agree. I really, really agree with that. Definitely. Professor, thank you so much. So 99 Nation Videos with another $5 super chat. Thank you so much. Please check out the Ubuntu Liberation Movement. I have not heard of that. It sounds vaguely familiar, but I'll check it out. Thank you. If it's something horrible, though, then I do not endorse it. But assuming it's something good, then I will check it out. Let's see. Jafafa Hots with a $5 super chat. For what it's worth, I'm turning 56, and I have never seen the left as strong as it is now. Okay, that's a little bit of hopium. I like it. Okay, very cool. Made Dharma with a $4.99 super chat. Wonderful panel. Great show as always. Remember also the international angle. The struggle for emancipation from exploitation is global. Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you so much for saying that. And thank you for the super chat. Dieter McBusiness with a $4.99 super chat. Defund the police struck me as a classic example of a bad left-wing political marketing. I wonder if no more badges for bullies would have worked better. I mean, it's certainly catchy, right? The thing about defund the police is that, oh, thank you, Mr. Anderson. Yes, twitch.tv/humanist report. I'm so sorry. I'm bad at plugging that. The thing about defund the police is it kind of emerged organically, and it wasn't like one of these focus group tested slogans. So yeah, I do see, the value in us getting more savvy when it comes to like marketing for sure. Let me see here. Planeta Tierra with a $5 super sticker. Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Let's see. I think I've got a couple more. 99 Nation Videos with another $5 super chat. I'm from the future. Ending dystopian times will be a butterfly effect of doom. You're more important than you know. Enjoy this money from the past. I love that. That's awesome. Well, it's only ending like temporarily. I think if I bring it back, I will like do maybe like an episode here and there, not necessarily a season where it's like every single week. It just kind of depends. It takes a lot of time to like plan these panels and construct them. So yeah, we'll see. The show, like, you know, I think bringing it back for special occasions will be a nice little treat, but you know, it's not going to go away for good. Let's see here. Christina Oaks with a $4.99 super chat. Hey, Mike, amazing panel. Love you and keep having these important discussions. Christina, you're amazing. Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. You're so kind. So I believe that's it, I want to say. Yes, I agree with that. Harvey. And talk more about that too. The thing about like leftists is that there's so many things that we're focused on, and I think that's part of like the factionalization that we were discussing. But folks, I am running out of steam, so I will not be streaming on Twitch tomorrow, because I'm preparing for a week off, which means I won't be streaming on Twitch next week. I'm taking the next week off to celebrate my 4-year wedding anniversary. And I really am looking forward to that. So I've got a lot to feed the algorithm. Like I've got to prepare segments in advance. So if you're a Patreon patron, you're going to see like a bajillion videos that you can watch early. Those will all be going out through next week. So if somebody attacks me and says, hey, Mike, you're not talking about this, let them know that it's because I have the week off. And I know you're wondering, wait, didn't you just take a week off in July? Yes, but that was because I just needed like an impromptu vacation for my birthday because I was feeling depressed. I usually work through my birthday, but I usually take the second week of September off every single year. I'm trying to like give myself a little bit more time to recuperate from, you know, the stress of talking about politics all the time. Not that my job is like stressful, but I mean, I think that taking a week off from time to time really helps with brain rot. So yeah, thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. You're all so kind. So I'll be back on Monday of, I don't know what the date is. Yeah, basically, all next week I'll be gone, but there's going to be at least one video every day. Lots of Twitch clips. I recorded a pretty big episode for this week. So yeah, there's always going to be something because you always have to feed the algorithm. But yeah. By the way, thank you so much to the mods. Really, really appreciate it. You all are just truly incredible. This show would not be possible without mods who supply us with the links for all of our guests. And most importantly, they mod, which is really, really valuable. Like you can't do a live show without mods. So thank you all so much. I really appreciate it. Okay. Let me see here. I think that is everything. Mods, since the show's over now, to celebrate, since you modded, send me a direct message on Twitter and I will gift you a Steam game if you play Steam. Or like I'll send you a code for like Nintendo Switch games or something, like a little thank you for modding. Yeah, we have all of our mods here. Folks, thank you again so much. Like I really, really enjoyed this series. If it comes back, I might do a rebrand where instead of like the vaporwave and the 80s aesthetic, maybe we do like something else. Like I don't know what other themes I do, like space, Western theme. No, I don't know, but something different. But yeah, mods, please send me a message on Twitter so I can gift you all some cool Steam games. Cabernacle, how's it going, man? Thank you so much. I'm glad that you were a part of it. There's so many people that I wanted to bring on that I just didn't have the chance to bring on. When I was originally planning to do like more episodes, I was going to send out more invites later, but I sent out like a lot of invites at the beginning. And so, I didn't get to bring on everyone, but there's still a lot of leftists that I want to bring on this show. So, it'll return at some point. You'll have to forgive me. I have like a scratchy throat. I have a bit of a cold. I did take a COVID test and it's negative, but, I have a cold right now, so I'm not feeling that great. Yeah, so the vacation comes at a really good time. Although, if I'm sick on my vacation, I'm going to be so upset. I'm going to be so mad if I'm sick for my vacation. But I basically just have a scratchy throat. Could be allergies too. But Yeah. Well, folks, I will see you all later. You can tell when I start to ramble, right? Yeah, I'll see you all later, folks. Take care. Thank you all so much. This has been such a wonderful series. Take care, everyone.